Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Harry Potter Master of Death Naruto gets trained. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Tirielle and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Minato Namikaze, fourth Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves, faced a nine-tailed with determination in his eyes. Unrolling a scroll that was the product of a frantic, sleepless night, he prepared himself to seal the fox away for eternity. His everlasting soul was, after all, a small payment for the safety of his village. "Are you sure about this?" Gamabunta asked from below his feet. "It's the only way," he told his friend. The great toad's silence was his acknowledgement, and Minato started a sequence of seals that was the last original technique he would ever create. Snake, boar, ram, rabbit, dog, rat, bird, horse, snake, seal. Nothing seemed different, and for a heart-stopping moment he thought that he'd failed. "Ahem," said a voice in front of him. A disembodied hand appeared, which then grabbed the air and pulled it back like the hood from a cloak. Oddly enough, a head became visible, and the hand then proceeded to pull at the air beneath it, revealing a person as it pulled away a shimmery silver cloak and folded it over one arm. What are you doing here? I told everyone else to stay inside the village," Minato frowned. "I don't think I was here for that bit," the stranger said, picking imaginary bits of lint off his clothes. "And as for why I'm here, well, you called for me." "I didn't call for anyone. I don't need backup for a suicide run." "Well, technically, you called for Shinigami-kun, but he's on sick leave right now. Indigestion, or something. Rai-chan wanted to come, but he'd probably just point and laugh and be supremely unhelpful. So I came instead." Minato looked the man who looked younger than he did and realized there were several things wrong with the situation. The man was standing on thin air as if it were water, which was odd but still possible. He had no armor or visible weapons or any sign of being a shinobi, other than a distinctly odd dress sense. Still possible. The world seemed to have gone quiet and still, and everything was frozen still except for him and the stranger. Curiously, he reached out to touch one of the sparks suspended in the air in front of him. It sizzled and disappeared. Less possible. Extremely less possible. He examined the figure in front of him. Short, slight, civilian build. Wire-frame glasses, messy black hair, pale skin. He was wearing a long black duster, purposefully ripped jeans, button-up green shirt, and a book bag with a black notebook peeking out. A silver pendant hung around his neck, shaped like a circle inside of a triangle and bisected by a vertical line. And his eyes were an eerie, slightly glowing green. "You're Minato," started. "Otter Black Harry, Master of Death, nice to meet you," he rattled off. He reached out a hand, and Minato shook it numbly. "Not what I was expecting." "I get that a lot," the Master of Death told him. "But if you write a request for help in Celestial and send it to the forces of nature, you can't really complain about what you get back." "I'm not complaining," Minato said. "Just surprised." The Master of Death nodded and gestured to the world around them. "Take your time. We literally have all the time in the world." "Actually," Minato said after a moment, "I was wondering about that. I thought that this would be more of a frantic last-moment effort to seal away the soul of my enemy, instead of," he waved a hand at the tableau around them, "this." The force of nature crossed his legs and sat down on the air. "Well, that's the execution part," he explained, ignoring Minato's wince at his choice of words. "Right now, we have to take care of the paperwork." He rifled through the notebook from his bag before stopping near the center and pulling a page out. Digging out a quill and inkwell as well, he scribbled something on it before handing it to Minato. "Fill that out," he ordered him. Minato looked down at the form. It asked him for his name, payment which the deity seemed to have already filled in as eternal everlasting soul, recipient of sealing, destination of sealing, and then a long section on insurance claims, which asked about things like his species, patron god, and ownership of ancient artifacts. He filled it out and gave it back. The Master of Death cast a critical eye over it and frowned. "Master of Death-sama. Is there a problem?" Minato asked. "Just call me Harry. And, well, your soul is enough to seal away a quarter of the 9 tails into yourself, to damn to eternal purgatory, or half of it into a vessel on the mortal plane. I'm afraid that you don't have enough power to seal the whole thing, and the rest of it would be left to rampage over that village over there you seem to be protecting," Harry informed him. Minato's eyes hardened in determination. "That's not good enough." Harry raised an eyebrow. The world seemed to darken around them, the light and warmth seeping away into the silence and sending a chill down his spine. He was suddenly distinctly aware of the aura of power that the man gave off, dark and tremendous and barely restrained. The man who was more than a man became imposing instead of friendly, seeming to tower over him without moving from his cross-legged seat. His eyes became brighter and sharper, gleaming like unfeeling emeralds in the night. "Are you challenging me?" he asked. "Me, the Master of Death, Ender of civilizations and worlds." ruler of the boundaries between this life and the next. Yes, said Minato. The ender of civilizations and worlds smiled and warmth returned to the world. Good answer, kid. You've got guts and I like that. So, do you have any apples? He blinked, confused at the subject change. Well, actually, I do. Why? Harry pulled out another page and gave it to him. It was identical to the first, but the line for payment simply contained the word, apples. Really? He asked, not realizing that he was speaking out loud. You'll understand if you ever become a Shinigami, Harry said. Mortal apples, when you're dead, are the most delicious things in existence, but it's not like I can just go grocery shopping when everyone I touch dies within the hour. They're just so juicy and crunchy, and he trailed off, a dazed expression on his face. When Minato handed the form back along with the apple that Kushina had given him the night before while insisting he eat something, Harry grabbed the apple first, biting into it with a small groan of delight. Alright, he said between bites, so that's either sealing the whole demon away in a vessel on the mortal plane, or half of it into yourself to rot in purgatory with you. Minato felt a bit insulted that his soul was worth about the same as an apple, but wisely kept silent about it. Fair warning, though, the being continued, there aren't any vessels right now on the mortal plane that can contain the entirety of the 9 tails. The most powerful one right now would be able to contain the 8 tails, so about half the 9 tails power, and that's your newborn infant son. Now, I like you and everything, but payment has to be equal to services rendered. It's one of the rules Chloe used to stabilize the multiverse and I'm not paying the difference myself. Have anything else to trade? Minato thought. The safety of his village and his family depended on his answer and the ability to find just a little bit more that the Master of Death would value. I'll do your paperwork, he offered finally. If you seal half the demon into my son and half into me, I'll do your paperwork for the next decade. The deity tossed the apple core into the air and ate it on its way down. I knew I liked you for a reason, he smiled. 2 decades, kid, and you have a deal. Harry hummed to himself as he strode into his office. What was officially his office, at least for the past few years, someone else had been working in it, doing all his paperwork. Some would call it a deal with the devil. Harry called it professional delegation. Hello, me-kun. The man at the desk didn't even look up, simply replying with a bored, I thought I asked you not to call me that. His hand traveled back and forth over the paper in front of him a few more times before he set down the pen, tipping his chair back to look up at his visitor with cerulean blue eyes. What can I do for you, boss? Harry pouted. Are you saying that I can't visit my favorite secretary without wanting something? Said secretary sighed, running a hand through his golden hair. I'm your only secretary, Harry. And the last time you came to see me, you tried to get me addicted to strawberries to win a bet with Kurosaki Taichu. Harry waved a hand, which had the nice side effect of conjuring a plush armchair out of thin air. He flopped into it with a comfortable whomp. The man across the desk didn't bat an eye. Harry took a moment to mourn the lack of reaction. He missed the days when his employee was nervous around magic. All 4 of them. Details, me-kun. All that paperwork is making you focus too much on them. You should take a break, sometime. I did tell you that you had weekends off. Me-kun, or rather, Namikaze. Minato gave him a pointed look. You don't even have days in this place, let alone weeks or weekends. The only way I can keep track of time is by that, he said, gesturing at an Herglis in the corner, and that's set for 20 years. The Herglis was the sign of his contract with Harry. It was tall, thin, and appeared to be filled with tiny particles of light instead of sand, which swirled gently in their respective halves. The top was much brighter than the bottom. Minato guessed that a little over a quarter of his time doing the Mater of Death's paperwork was over. Naruto must be almost 6 by now, he mused. Harry's teasing expression softened into a genuine, if contrite, smile. I'd let you visit, but even I can't bend the laws of the universe that much. If your chain of fate is broken, the contract would be too. I know, Minato told him with a wry smile, absent-mindedly toying with the long chain that connected his chest with the Herglis. The contemplative look crossed Harry's face. Well, it was true that he rarely visited me-kun, he had grown rather fond of him. After all, the man was doing all of his paperwork, leaving Harry free to traipse the multiverse. Indentured servant or no, he considered the 4th Hokage a friend. And he was good company when he wasn't in workaholic mode. He decided. I can't let you visit him, but blue eyes snapped towards him, paying much more attention than they were before. I might be able to deliver something. Not a card, dead people don't write cards, but I can probably deliver a birthday present. The brilliantly hopeful look rose in Minato's eyes. Are you sure? I don't want to trouble you. It's not in our contract or anything. Consider it 5 years' worth of Christmas and birthday bonuses, Harry told him. Minato thought for a moment. Even the Hokage got Christmas bonuses, although he had to give them to himself. Alright, he said. I can agree to that. Now, for the present, here's what I would like you to do. Harry snickered loudly as another Anbu ran past him. There was no chance of Harry being noticed, of course he'd hidden himself just a little bit diagonal from the fabric of this particular reality. Close enough to see, but not close enough to be seen. Even if there wasn't anything the mortals could really do to him, the village security forces could make it annoying if he ever had to come back. This particular Anbu appeared mostly normal. Until he ran into a beam of sunlight, that is. The moment he stepped out of the shadows, his uniform burst into a dazzling display of sparkles. But really, it could be worse. He'd seen one 6-foot-tall ninja running around in a pink uniform edged with ivory lace and ribbons. Whoever had done this deserved a prize. His prankster genes, inherited from his father and both his godfathers, approved. And he had an interesting feeling that he knew who was behind it. Fortunately, unlike the Anbu racing around the village, Harry could cheat to find the culprit. He closed his eyes to concentrate and let his focus fade from the world around him. Most of what he could sense was chakra, but there was a faint hint of magic, foreign to its surroundings. The magic was his own, used to reinforce the seal which Mikun had sold his soul for. Tucking a wrapped package into his pocket, he followed the magic to the top of the Hokage monument, walking on the air as easily as if it were solid ground. The trail led him to the edge of the fourth Hokage's hair, and he took a moment to amuse himself with the fact that he was standing on his friend's head. Not a very long moment though, because the person that he was looking for was sitting right in front of him. Harry shifted entirely into reality and hit the dirt with a soft thud. The child looked around at the noise, and Harry took a good look at him. Young as he was, the resemblance was unmistakable. The exact same shade of blue stared out at him from beneath a familiar mop of yellow hair. There was no mistaking that this was Minato's child, even if he looked closer to 4 years old than 6. "Hi there," he greeted, taking a step forward. The boy immediately flinched back. Harry frowned inwardly, taking care to keep a smile pasted on his face. On a second glance, the boy wasn't just short for his age, he was scrawny and dirty. There were no scars or bruises from any abuse, thank Merlin, but someone definitely wasn't taking care of him properly. Harry plunked down onto the dirt, noticing how a bit of the child's wariness dissipated now that they were the same height and Harry didn't seem to be coming any closer. "My name is Potter Harry," he told the kid. "Are you Uzumaki Naruto?" He gave a blinding grin as he introduced himself. Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage of Konohagakure. The best ninja to have ever walked the earth. He noticed the amusement in Harry's eyes and scowled. "What, you don't think I can do it? Don't laugh at me. I'm going to be the best ninja the village has ever seen," and then they lull. Harry cut him off with a shake of his head. "I wasn't laughing at you, Naruto-kun. It's a good dream. You just reminded me of your father." Naruto stared. "You knew my dad?" he asked, heartbreakingly hopeful. He nodded. "Nobody ever told you about him?" Naruto looked at the ground. "Nobody's even told me who he is. All I know is that he died in the Kyuubi attack. Hokage Jiji knows, but he won't tell me. He says it's too dangerous now, and he'll tell me when I'm older." He scowled at the dirt, showing what he thought of that opinion. Recalling Shinigami-kun's complaints about exactly how much paperwork his employee had created while alive, Harry had to agree with the Hokage. Some things just weren't safe for an almost 6-year-old to know. Naruto scowled even more when he told him. "But even if I can't tell you who I was," he continued, reminding himself to use past tense, "I can tell you what kind of person he was." Naruto brightened at this and shyly gestured at the empty space beside him. Moving closer so that they were both dangling their legs over the edge of the monument, Harry told Naruto about his father and watched hero worship blossom in his eyes. It was almost sunset when the Anbu found them. Harry wasn't quite sure if this was a sign of Naruto's competence or the village's utter failure. They'd spent the time talking about Minato although he was never actually named and then swapping prank ideas. The kid was devious. The ninja that found them was female, judging by the long hair and slender shape, but he wasn't quite sure it might have been a Hyuga. She had a pair of fluffy white cat ears, a matching tail with a bell on the end, and tiny paw prints covering her uniform. She started, mask facing Naruto and hands twitching, as if they had the unbearable urge to strangle someone. Naruto blinked innocently at her with wide blue eyes. "Me? You're coming with me to the Hokage Tower." "Okay," said Naruto cheerfully. "I haven't seen him in ages. Do you think he'll take me out for ramen?" The Anbu grabbed onto the back of his orange jumpsuit. "Hokage-sama doesn't have enough time to take brats like you out for ramen," she sternly informed him. Naruto shrieked. "No time for ramen." Harry and the Anbu both winced. "But that's awful," Naruto continued. "Ramen is the food of the gods, Dadabeo. Hey, Anbu-san, can we go get ramen?" He ignored the ninja's firm denial. "We can bring some over to Hokage Jiji, cause he doesn't have time to do it himself. Hey, what's your favorite type of ramen?" He grabbed the Anbu's hand, which had a paw print on its glove, and started dragging her off towards the tower, talking a mile a minute about ramen of all things. I bet you like chicken ramen, Anbu-san, Ni-san says that it's low soda bum, and girls love that. For a moment, the Anbu turned a pleading glance, or at least, what Harry was certain would be a pleading glance if she wasn't wearing a mask towards him. Seeing her turn, Naruto turned around as well, walking a few paces backwards as he waved enthusiastically. "Sayonara, Harry-san," Naruto called. Harry grinned. "See you later, kid." As they disappeared, Harry realized that he actually meant it. When he returned to his office, Minato was focusing intensely at a sheet of paperwork. Harry waited for him to finish before he realized that his eyes were not moving at all. Rather, the man was staring at a single spot, his writing hand fidgeting restlessly with a pen. Harry cleared his throat loudly. The reaction was instantaneous. Minato jumped out of his chair, pressing his back against the wall, and threw the pen at the doorway, enhancing it with wind chakra. Harry just snickered, ducking under the projectile and watching it embed itself in the hallway behind him. "Boss." Minato greeted, not giving any consideration to the fact that he just attempted to murder said boss. "Did you find him? How is he? Did he like the present? Is he happy? Healthy? Well fed? Cute? Does he look like me?" "Right. The present." One of Harry's hands drifted towards his coat pocket where he could feel the slight previously forgotten weight of the parcel. "Yes, I found him. I didn't give him the present, though I thought I'd wait and surprise him on his actual birthday. Wouldn't that be nicer? It's only September in that world and you came to work for me when he was born, sometime in October. It's not that much time and it would make it more special." Minato looked at him suspiciously. Harry was quite sure that Minato suspected he had actually just forgotten, but there was no way for the ex-Hokage to prove it. "Fine," the man acquiesced. "October 10th. You got it." Harry nodded. "He seems like a happy kid," he added, answering the other questions. "Really cheerful. He has your hair and eyes and your weirdo ears." Minato gave a mild glare at the ear comment, but he couldn't disguise the paternal pride in his expression. It was ridiculously sappy. "And he has a really weird ramen addiction. And a pranking one too." Minato gave an exasperated smile. "Really? I guess it can't be helped. It's in his genetics, after all. He gets the ramen from both of us, probably wants to eat at every meal or something, but the whole pranking thing is definitely from his mother." And Harry hesitated. The child looked like he was being neglected. But what good would it do to tell Mikon that little tidbit, chained to a desk as he was? And he might not really be neglected. The malnutrition could come from a lack of vegetables and overabundance of ramen, which was more a matter of ignorance than neglect. He might just be small for his age, or a particularly fussy eater. And it was all circumstantial. There were no bruises or any other telling injuries. He would have been able to sense them. "And?" Minato asked, curious. "He'd check later, on the kid's birthday. If it was really that bad, he could do something about it. And you wouldn't believe what he did to the Anbu when I was there. Hey, do you know any Anbu with long purple hair? At least, I think it was purple. You see, it was covered in this really thick orange goo and it smelled like." Before long, it was October and it was time for Harry to give Naruto his birthday present. He dressed himself up for the occasion, donning a set of Eastern-influenced dress robes in emerald and black that was from his original world and thus older than several civilizations. He also pulled on a long pair of black gloves. Naruto, thanks to the bit of Harry's magic in the seal, was immune to the whole master of death kills whoever he touches thing, but he doubted the kid would appreciate it if he killed a birthday guest by mistake. Ascending to Konohagakure, he smiled at what he found. It seemed that the village was in full-out festival mode. Adults were talking and shouting and dancing, with a telltale sway in their steps that Harry knew meant they'd been drinking. Groups of teenagers gossiped eagerly, drifting between stalls and getting turned away from bars. Children scampered all over the place, under the watchful eye of their parents and babysitters. It was, Harry mused as he walked through the streets, a good time for a child to have his birthday. He wasn't sure what they were celebrating, though in all his prior travels in the elemental nations, he'd never encountered a festival on October the 10th. On the other hand, his prior travels were neither extensive nor recent. He paused at a puppeteer's stand. A miniature stage had been erected, with a small curtain at the top to hide the man manipulating the puppets. The man seemed to be in the middle of a performance, judging by the clump of fascinated children. Harry raised an eyebrow when he recognized the puppets: a small human with a shock of yellow yarn for hair, a much larger red toad with a pipe and a scar over one eye, and an equally large crimson fox with 9 tails. So that's what they were celebrating, Harry realized. Looking around, he could see the occasional mourner, although not many, because the 9 tails had been stopped before it reached the village and he was in the civilian sector. The mourners would be those who had family outside the village and who knew the shinobi who went out to try to delay the fox. He turned a corner and whistled under his breath, impressed in spite of himself and a bit disturbed. Towering over a marketplace was a gigantic effigy of the 9-tailed fox, built out of wood and surrounded by a small mountain of lit kindling. It was burning slowly, probably designed to last all night. He twitched a finger to enhance the flow of magic to his cooling charms. Konoha was much more tropical than England ever was, and the added heat from the massive fire was quite uncomfortable. The sight of a crowded stall selling accessories, Sasuke, proper Uchiha do not wear goggles, reminded him of the reason he was in the village in the first place. One hand drifted into his pocket to fidget with the gift as he followed the faint trace of foreignness once more, letting it lead him through the bustling festival. He wouldn't have been surprised to find the child at a food stand, especially the one he passed that advertised a ramen eating contest. But the boy's obsession, that should have drawn him like a moth to a flame. Instead, the trace led him to the outskirts of the bright festivities, then past them. The further he walked, the more cracks appeared in the buildings and pavement. The more chips appeared in the paint. There was a curious lack of people, too, at least until he encountered an angry drunken crowd surrounded a decrepit apartment building. Harry frowned. His magic was telling him that Naruto was in that building. He ducked behind a building and phased out of reality, just enough so that he could make his way intangibly through the crowd. He shivered as he walked through. A balding man in his 40s passing through people was not unlike passing through ghosts in his adolescence, many years ago. Reaching the door, he realized why the crowd had not pushed its way inside. Guarding the door was an Anbu, with his arms crossed, back straight, and feet firmly planted a shoulder-width apart. His mask, painted with bold brushstrokes to resemble a tiger, stared out at those surrounding the building. All in all, he presented a clear, silent message. You will not pass. Harry turned his body sideways to avoid the uncomfortable feeling of going through someone else and walked inside. Inside the apartment building were more Anbu, although these had taken basic lengths to hide themselves. Some were hidden behind the doorways of empty apartments, and at least one was stationed inside each stairwell entrance. They crouched, waiting and watching, and Harry ignored them all. When he got to the kid's floor, he could immediately tell which apartment belonged to him. Apart from several scorch marks on the door and swear words scratched into its fresh coat of paint, there was an Anbu standing guardedly on either side of it. Feeling a bit mischievous, Harry walked over so that he was standing right in front of Naruto's apartment. He made himself visible and knocked politely. A few things happened at once. The Anbu on his left jumped and swore in a way that told Harry he was a rookie. The Anbu on his left flickered behind him and pulled his unresisting arms behind his back, simultaneously bringing a blade to rest a scant half-inch from his throat. And a powerful chakra presence flared protectively inside the apartment, making Harry wonder how he missed the fact that the Hokage, or at least someone as powerful as him, was there. Hello? Harry called brightly through the door. I'm looking for Uzumaki Naruto-kun. Is this the right apartment? He ignored the way that speaking brought the blade, a standard issue katana, by the looks of it, closer to his neck. It wasn't like he could die. There was silence, then the slow rattle of a lock being opened. And then what sounded like a few deadbolts, too. When the last clatter of metal faded away, the door swung open. Standing in the doorway was an old man with a pointed goatee and liver spots on his face. His hair was receding and his face was lined with wrinkles, but his eyes shone with keen intelligence. More notably, he was radiating the intensely protective chakra that he had noticed before. Harry smiled at the third and current Hokage of Konoha. Is Naruto-kun here? The man smiled back, and Harry was reminded of Dumbledore's grandfatherly airs. It was decidedly suspicious. I might know where you could find him. Why are you looking for him? Harry smiled his best angelic smile. I have a present for him, of course. After all, it's his birthday today. But I've been rude, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Potter Harry. Naruto-kun's met me before. He winked at the suspicious tuft of blonde hair that was sticking out from behind a couch. It disappeared with a tiny squeak. So you're the mysterious Harry-san, said the Hokage, his suspicions remaining unsatisfied. If anything, they had increased. Harry suspected that Naruto had told the man everything about their encounter, and unlike Naruto, the Hokage actually realized how strange it was. Naruto has told me quite a bit about you, so it is a pleasure to actually meet you. My name is Sachirobe Hiruzen, and as I am sure you have noticed, yes, this is Naruto's apartment. Come in and eat with us. However friendly the tone, it was not a request. The Anbu released his arms and shoved him gently through the door closing with a subtle click behind him. Harry looked around at the apartment. It was quite bare, with a set of simple furniture taking up the middle of the room and a kitchenette against the wall. Two closed doors sat against the opposite wall, hiding what Harry suspected were a bathroom and a bedroom. The target was nailed between them, with a few throwing knives embedded in it off-center. The sole window had curtains drawn over it. Harry smiled when he realized they were printed to look like ramen noodles. Speaking of ramen, he could definitely smell some. His attention was drawn to the coffee table in the middle of the room. Set in the center was a board game. On either side of the game were steaming takeout bowls of ramen, and in a neat stack on the floor were at least 10 more lidded bowls, all labeled with a different flavor. And beside the ramen bowls, still half hidden behind the couch, was Naruto. "Happy birthday Naruto-kun," greeted Harry. "I did say I'd be seeing you again, didn't I? I have a present for you from your father." Naruto gave a sort of whooping strangled gasp of shocked happiness. It was a strange sound, but Harry understood the sentiment. It was a louder version of how he felt when he got his invisibility cloak in his first year of Hogwarts. The child accepted the wrapped package reverently, his eyes bright with emotion. The Hokage, on the other hand, was looking at him with an expression of deep mistrust, and he was quite certain the Anbu hidden in the shadows was glaring at him. Later, Harry mouthed at the Hokage while Naruto was distracted. The man nodded a terse agreement. "Open it," Harry suggested, settling down on the couch. Naruto sat beside him, and the Hokage cautiously settled himself in the armchair across the table. The boy set the package in his lap and unwrapped it with care typical for a child his age, carefully removing the tape so that the paper wouldn't drip. Inside was a pair of wide-banded green goggles with white accents around the lenses. Naruto lifted them with wide eyes. "They're so cool." Considerately, Harry suppressed the urge to snicker and/or burst out laughing. Instead, he just reached out a hand to ruffle the 6-year-old's hair. "Your father had a pair when he was your age," he explained. "He would make his father your grandfather take him cliff diving all the time and he got the goggles so that he could keep his eyes open the entire time even if he couldn't chakra shield them." Naruto was practically bouncing with excitement. "Cliff diving? What's that?" "Exactly what it sounds like." Naruto turned to the Hokage. "Gigi, can I go? Can I please? It sounds so cool, Tebeo." The Sandaime looked at him. "Can you swim yet, Naruto?" "No. You're only allowed to go cliff diving if you know how to swim." Naruto pouted. Harry, unable to resist, pulled out a camera and snapped a picture. "Huh?" said Naruto, blinking away the spots in his vision left by the flash. "I'm sorry, Naruto-kun," said Harry unconvincingly. "I just couldn't resist. You look so cute when you're pouting." "I wasn't pouting. And I'm not cute," sputtered Naruto. "Cute is for girls." "Ah," nodded Harry sagely. "And girls have cooties. Isn't that right, Sarutobi-san?" "Indeed," the Hokage agreed, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he stroked his goatee. "Dreadful things, those cooties." Naruto just huffed at them. "Grown-ups are stupid," he informed them bluntly. "Can I have my ramen now?" The Hokage chuckled and nodded. Harry simply watched in fascination as the boy practically inhaled all the ramen except for the bowl sitting in front of the Sandaime. Somehow, the boy also managed to chatter about all the amazing pranks he'd done in the weeks since Harry had seen him last. Harry made a point of not looking directly at the child's mouth. The one glance he had risked had actually made him slightly nauseous. The Hokage did his best to look disapproving at the descriptions of the child's antics, but his eyes were twinkling and several times he'd been unable to completely suppress a snort. Naruto finished with a loud belch and a contented sigh, putting down his chopsticks and sprawling himself over his couch. "Full already?" Sarutobi teased. "After only 15 bowls of ramen." "Nah," replied the child. "But I thought I should at least leave some for you and Harry-san. Ichiraku's is the best, Harry-san. You should try it." "I'm not that hungry," Harry tried to say, pushing the bowl back towards Naruto. "You eat it. It's your birthday, after all." A menacing glint entered Naruto's eyes. "Not hungry for ramen? Are you saying that you don't like ramen? Are you a heretic?" Harry wondered where the 6-year-old learned a word like heretic. On second thought, maybe you should leave room for dessert. I saw a few wonderful looking stands down at the festival. The child visibly deflated. "I can't go to the festival, Harry-san. If I go, people try to hurt me." There it was. His proof. Harry had to concentrate to keep his magic leash and his surroundings unbroken. He hated child abuse. "Do they? Who tries to hurt you, Naruto-kun?" His voice was calm and reassuring and still sent a chill down the Hokage's spine. "Gucci-san and Amni-san don't. And some of the other kids don't mind me too much." Which meant that almost everyone else did. Harry glanced at the Hokage and saw the suppressed rage and resignation in his face. The man truly did care for Naruto-kun, but he was probably tied down with politics and bureaucratic incompetency. As for the why, well, there was one very obvious reason that Harry could think of for a mob to form outside Naruto-kun's home during a festival that celebrated the Nine Tails' defeat. People knew. Harry reached out an arm to the child and pulled him close into a half hug. "I'll never hurt you, kid," he promised. "Your father would find a way to kill me if I did. And I doubt your Gigi would either. So just forget about them. They don't matter." Naruto stiffened at first, but then his hands rose up to tangle themselves into Harry's robes. Harry patted his head gently and mouthed another message to the Hokage. "We need to talk." The rest of the evening was spent in comfortable celebration. The Sandaime tried to enlist Harry to teach Naruto shogi, the game set out on the coffee table, but Harry didn't remember the exact rules and Naruto didn't quite have the patience for it. Instead, Naruto and Harry teamed up on one side against the Hokage and narrated the game as if the shogi pieces were real warriors. Eventually the game board was abandoned altogether and battle lines were drawn in chalk on the floor. After the Fire King's dramatic surrender speech to the Great Ramen army, Harry entertained the birthday boy with simple card tricks. Even if the boy wanted to grow up to be a ninja, he wasn't yet adept enough to see through the sleight of hand and sparse amounts of actual magic behind the tricks. When he finally tired of that, the Hokage sent him off to bed with a promise of a bedtime story after he brushed his teeth. The room was quiet after Naruto left. After a long moment, the Hokage turned to Harry. "Who are you, really?" Harry just shook his head. "A friend of his father's," he replied. A better description would take too much time. The Hokage must have given some sort of signal because a heartbeat later he sensed a senbon flying towards his face. He didn't react to it. The Hokage wouldn't have his Anbu aim anywhere vital as long as Naruto was still so emotionally attached to him. Indeed, the needle sliced a line across the flesh of his cheek and did no further damage. He didn't react to the pain, either. The Hokage was still scrutinizing him when Naruto announced that his teeth were clean and he was in his pajamas. Tearing himself away from the mystery of Potter Harry, he went to wish his charge good night. When Hiruzen returned to the main room of the apartment, he was disappointed but unsurprised to find it empty. If he had dropped as many hints as Potter did on Potter's home ground and while befriending one of Potter's favorite people, he would have made himself as scarce as possible too. He indicated to Kat that he was leaving and that 2/3 of the Anbu should remain on guard just in case for the rest of the night. Kat nodded. She'd gone through this routine before. She sent her trainee to tell the rest of the guard platoon while she herself remained at her post outside Naruto's door. The Hokage's guard assembled on the roof before leaving the building with leaps and body flickers. The idea was to keep the civilians from realizing that the guard roster had been cut. Prior years had proven that if the mob believed they had a numbers advantage, it would be very hard to stop them with non-lethal force. As he raced across the rooftops with his guard, he smiled. Naruto had had a good birthday. That fact alone was worth the headache he was getting from Potter. He arrived at the Hokage Tower and, seeing nobody around except for the Anbu, scaled the wall and entered his office through the window. He scolded all his ninja for it on principle, but the fact was that entering through the window was so much more convenient than navigating the inside of the tower. A quick chakra pulse confirmed that the only ones inside the room were the guard Anbu and a depressingly large stack of paperwork. He settled into his chair and pulled the first sheet over with a sigh. "I find it helps to delegate," a voice said in front of him. "That's how I met Mi-kun." Hiruzen looked up slowly, hiding his surprise. Where there had previously been empty space, there was now a rather familiar man. His Anbu had pinned his arms behind his back and one was holding a blade to the man's throat. Again. And once more, the man seemed perfectly at ease with the situation. This time, however, Hiruzen made no motion for the man's release. "Mi-kun?" asked Hiruzen, already suspecting the answer. "Namikaze Minato-kun to you, I suspect. But most people just call him the Yondaime Hokage. Rather lazy of them, don't you think?" Potter rolled his eyes. "Perhaps," Hiruzen replied noncommittally. How on earth had the man snuck into his office? "I mean, I don't think Naruto-kun even knows the Yondaime's real name. I could go up to him and say, 'Your father's name was Namikaze Minato,' and he would just look confused. The name would mean absolutely naught." "How?" he interrupted with an icy voice, all traces of grandfatherly warmth leached away. "How exactly do you know that fact?" Potter flashed a cheeky smile. "Why, Mi-kun told me, of course. Sent me with the kid's birthday present and everything, remember?" There was not a single hint of a lie in the man's body, but that didn't mean that he was telling the truth. "How did you meet Minato-san?" he asked, subtly hand signaling for one of his men to bring him Yamanaka Inoichi. Discreetly. Protocol C-12 for unknown individuals. "He never mentioned you. I would have remembered your name. It's rather foreign." "Probably because our meeting wasn't terribly interesting, Sarutobi-san." And that was another strange thing. Potter refused to use his title. He passed it off as ignorance before, but they were standing inside his office now and the man was being restrained by his personal guards. "I helped him with something. To pay me back, he agreed to do about 20 years' worth of paperwork." A shrug. 20 years is an awful lot of paperwork, so I said I'd do him a favor for free. And here I am. What kind of help is worth 20 years of paperwork? He really did want to know. Like all the other Hokages, Minato had detested paperwork, although he had been rather good at it. For him to agree to that, the task must have been immense. "The seal," Potter replied. Hiruzen waited, hoping that he would elaborate. He didn't. There was a minute or so of tense silence, and then Potter said, "Would you please stop that? It's not going to work, and it's rude." Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. He was the Hokage. He wasn't rude, he was intimidating. "Not you," Potter said with another eye roll. The mind reader in the corner. He turned his head. You're about several hundred years too young to break into my mind, he informed the coroner. If you want to know something, just ask. I've been perfectly truthful this entire time. I try not to lie to people like you. He turned so he was facing Hiruzen once more. The answer to the question that you're trying not to ask is yes, by the way. It's that seal. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes. Who are you, really? He asked for the second time that night. Otter's expression brightened. Somehow, the man managed to snap his fingers while wearing gloves. The Anbu holding him tensed, and Potter freed his arms, meeting no resistance from the otherwise frozen men. He delicately took the tanto at his neck by the blade and pushed it away, causing Hiruzen to run a thumb gently over a kunai blade in preparation for a summoning. The man rummaged in his pockets for a moment before procuring a small purple ball with a golden misshaped zigzag on it, which he threw onto the ground at his feet. The ball burst into a small explosion of smoke, green glitter dust, and loud brassy fanfare. I, Potter announced, am the great Potter Harry, magician extraordinaire. I like distractions and apples, I dislike boredom and paperwork, my hobby is traveling, and my dream for the future is retirement, preferably on a nice sandy beach somewhere. He gave a theatrically flourishing bow. Nice to meet you. Hiruzen sensed a deep, self-loathing shame radiating from his immobile Anbu. Personally, he had the distinct feeling that the universe was laughing at him. After a moment, Potter snapped his fingers again, making a plush armchair appear out of nowhere. Tough crowd, he sighed as he relaxed into it. Fine. Go ahead and interrogate me. Professor X in the corner should at least be able to tell if I'm lying. Deciding that he no longer had patience for the man, Hiruzen was blunt. What do you want with Naruto? No more than you, I suspect, the man told him. His happiness, general well-being, and a long lifespan. The difference between us is how much power I have to achieve those things. You have the distinct look of someone drowning in others' politics and stupidity. I, luckily for you all, have no such obligations whatsoever. But why? He wanted to know. Why go to such lengths for a child you met barely a month ago? What do you want? Otter glared. I want what I told you I want. Me-kun's my friend and I take care of my friends, and if that means babysitting his kid until he won't get abused by his village, then I'll do it. His scowl subsided a bit. You've done all you can. I get it. But let me help. Naruto-kun deserves better, even if the villagers don't know how to appreciate his sacrifice. And then quieter still, under his breath, I hate child abuse. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow at that. Potter gave him a look that said that he considered the matter closed. I swear on my blood that I mean the child no harm, Sarutobi-san, the man said seriously, pulling off a glove and biting his thumb hard enough to draw blood. So mote it be. A strange pressure filled the air for a moment, as if judging the oath, then disappeared as if nothing had happened. The blood was gone, and Potter slipped his glove back on. Somehow, Hiruzen knew that the oath was binding. Not the village? He asked cautiously. Potter snorted. I want to go back to that mob around Naruto-kun's apartment and beat them bloody. So no, not your village. Rather not have my blood boiling in my veins for a lie, thank you very much. He supposed that was all the assurance he was going to get. Good enough, for now hopefully, given time, the man would form emotional attachments, ensuring his loyalty. What was more interesting was that thing about his blood boiling in his veins. He called himself a magician and did that have something to do with it? A kinjutsu, perhaps, or maybe something genetic, but he would have heard of an ability this powerful. After all, his Anbu were still standing there, frozen. Oh, no, Potter said, eyes wide. They call you the professor, don't they? You've got that look. He blinked, summoning his best senile grandfather confusion face. What look? The research look. No. I'm not going to. Isn't there some sort of paperwork you need to do if I'm going to move into the village? I'll just move into his building, the thing looks abandoned anyways. Come on, seriously, I'm not that interesting at all. Hiruzen looked pointedly at the armchair, the frozen Anbu, and the green sparkles left on the floor. Potter looked at him with what was possibly the most disturbing set of puppy dog eyes he'd ever seen. Oh, fine, he huffed, pulling an immigration form from the endless wastes his assistants called filing cabinets. Help me fill this out. And? The woman was beautiful in an average sort of way. She had a small beauty mark under her right eye and two more on her left hand, inky spots that absorbed the bar's low light whenever she raised her cup to drink. Her entire bearing screamed that she was out to drown her sorrows, alone, thank you very much, and most of the bar's patrons respected her wishes and left her to herself. So naturally, when Jiraiya entered the bar, he made a beeline for her. What's bothering you, beautiful? He asked, sliding into the seat next to her. She gave him an unimpressed look. You are. Really? He asked, a dramatically wounded look appearing on his face. But I'm a sage. Very wise, we sages are. You should try asking me for advice. The woman rolled her eyes. If you're a sage, I'm a flying hippopotamus on a tricycle. She turned back to her drink, dismissing him. Tirielle persisted, leaning over into her line of sight. You're far too beautiful to be compared to a hippopotamus. Even a flying one, he insisted. The woman rolled her eyes and waved a hand. Whatever. Buy me a drink. Beer. Tirielle hid his surprise. The messenger for that was what she was, she'd known all the countersigns was carrying a direct message from the Hokage, but apparently it was either too sensitive or too minor to warrant an official squad. He did as she requested and waited patiently. It's a kid, she told him after a while, swirling her drink in her glass. Yours? He asked. Nah, she replied. My cowhide son, but an orphan now, so I keep an eye on him. He's like a favorite nephew, because Kami knows I'm not old enough to have a favorite grandchild. Naruto, realized Jiraiya. The woman took a long draught of beer. He's just lives on his own, and I worry about him so much. He trusts everyone. Everyone. He just goes out and tries to make friends with every single person he sees. His newest friend is some man who is 20 years older than him and who nobody in my whole town has ever heard of before in their life. Oh? Asked Jiraiya, curious and concerned and hiding both. The woman snorted. The guy says that he was friends with my sweet little cowhide and promised to take care of the kid if anything happened to the kid's parents. How does that kid not realize how weird it is that nobody's ever heard of him? And now the man's living across the hall. I don't trust him one bit, but I can't get rid of him. She finished her drink and slammed the glass on the bar. So, Sage, what's your advice? His head was buzzing with questions, but he only allowed himself a moment to contemplate them. I think you should stop drinking, he told her. Why don't I take you home? I can give you some personal counseling. He winked. If she had any more details, she'd take up his offer. She scowled instead. So much for your sagely wisdom, she said. Does that line actually work on anyone? I really am a sage, Jiraiya insisted. You really are a weirdo, she mocked, sounding disgusted. You're bothering me now. Just go home. Sure you don't want to join me? Go home. The bartender was watching them now, checking whether Jiraiya was harassing the woman. Jiraiya put his hands up in defeat, tried for a goodnight kiss, he got slapped for it and left the bar. After all, he had a hidden village to return to. Spying was a perfectly acceptable ninja thing to do, which was what Naruto would tell anyone if they asked what he was doing. Not that he got asked it a lot. Most of the time, interactions with other people were made up of 1 part yelling and 2 parts running, and occasionally 1 more part neon orange paint. He was standing on his toes on his kitchen stool, dragged all the way up to his door, so he level with the spy hole seal that Hokage Jiji had made him. Several months ago, someone had rang the doorbell and then stabbed a senbon through the glass peephole, almost poking his eye out. Before his scratches were fully healed, though, Hokage Jiji had come over with a brush and a bottle of ink and drawn the seal on the back of his door. He traced a spiral over it like his Jiji had taught him to, Uzumaki, just like your family name, Naruto, and watched as a small patch of wood appeared to ripple out of existence. All morning, there had been weird bumps and strange thumps, and some astonishingly creative swears coming from across the hall, and the mystery was starting to get to him. If someone had come up to try and hurt him, the Anbu would have taken care of them. They were still around and keeping him in the apartment and even picking up his groceries. Nico-chan kept bringing him vegetables, which was totally unfair revenge for the whole kitty cat prank. The Raymond should not be messed with. It wasn't one of his neighbors either, simply because he didn't have any neighbors. He was the only one who lived in the entire apartment building. For some reason, Hokage Jiji didn't agree that that was a good enough reason to booby-trap the bottom floors and turn the top ones into his personal playground, training ground, palace shrine to the Raymond gods. What he didn't know was that Naruto had started doing it anyways. He looked through the door. Right across the hallway, an apartment door was open and he could see someone moving around inside. They were walking back and forth, occasionally dragging a couch or a chair or a table with them. Naruto also saw what looked like a birdcage, a giant pot that was almost as tall as he was, and a floating pile of books. He instantly decided 2 things. 1. He had a neighbor now. 2. His neighbor was awesome. As he watched, his new neighbor turned towards the door. Naruto felt his eyes widen in recognition as he saw his neighbor's face. He had only ever seen eyes that green once in his life, and he was 6 now. Good morning Naruto-kun, Harry-san called, and even if Naruto wasn't looking he could have heard the smile in his voice. I hope I didn't wake you up. Would you like to help me unpack? He definitely did. Naruto scrambled off his chair and looked to the Anbu who had been on his couch for most of the day, stretched out with a lazy readiness and an orange book in one hand. The ninja nodded without looking up and Naruto beamed. He dragged his stool away from the door and undid the deadbolts with a practiced hand, not bothering to lock it behind him with an Anbu still in the apartment and instead choosing to fling himself across the hall. Harry-san. Harry-san, Harry-san, Harry-san. Are you moving in? Are you my new neighbor? Can you make things fly? Can you make me fly? Can we be friends? Can you make ramen? Can you? Slow down, Naruto-kun, Harry-sen said with a chuckle, ruffling his hair with his free hand. In order. Yes, maybe later, of course, and sort of. Naruto stared at him with wide eyes. Teach me? To make stuff fly, I mean. Harry-sen gave him a look. What's the magic word? He thought for a moment. Abracadabra. Harry-sen laughed at him. But it was more of a chuckle, like Gigi did sometimes, so Naruto didn't mind too much. Not that magic word, Naruto, he said. The magic word that you use when you're asking someone for something. Naruto scrunched up his face. Please. Please what? Please teach me to make stuff fly, Harry-san. Harry-san gave an indulgent smile. Maybe when you're older, Naruto-kun. I thought you were a cool grown-up, Naruto complained loudly. That's what everyone says to me. I'm 6 years old now. Harry-san placed his armload on the floor. They were curtains, deep red and soft-looking, and the way they shone slightly in the light almost distracted Naruto from his complaints. Harry-san crouched down so that he could make eye contact with him without making him strain his neck and explained himself gently. Naruto-kun, I know that you're smart enough to understand that there are some things it's just not safe for you to know yet, and… If I'm old enough to live on my own, I'm old enough to know stuff, Naruto interrupted, petulant. And, he continued, there are some things that really do need to wait until you're older and you just have to trust your Gigi for those. But there's a different reason for this one. Do you know what chakra is? Naruto nodded shallowly, still defiant. It's what Hokage Gigi says lets people do ninjutsu. He says I have lots of it. Harry-san smiled strangely. I'm not surprised, he told him. Do you know what chakra control is? Controlling chakra? Asked Naruto. That was pretty obvious. Harry-san nodded. Chakra control isn't really possible until your body's developed to a certain age, he explained. And even then, making things float takes a lot of control, which has to be trained. It's a skill called chakra strings, which lets you move things without touching them. Even if you start training now, you won't be able to do it for several years. Oh, said Naruto, feeling a bit silly for his little outburst. Harry-san's eyes softened with understanding. I know how frustrating it can be when people don't tell you things, Naruto-kun. And while I can't promise that I'll always tell you everything you want to know, I can promise that I'll always explain my reasons for not telling you. Think you swear? Asked Naruto, hating how small his voice sounded. Harry-san held up his hand, little finger outstretched. Naruto linked his own with it. Harry-san's hand was warm and solid and reassuring, and Naruto mentally decreased his massive list of welcoming pranks to one a week. Harry-san liked pranks, and he liked Harry-san. He wouldn't mind too much. So, Harry-san asked, tone light. Does this mean I get to be a cool grow-up? Naruto thought of flying books and promises, and nodded. It was around lunchtime when there was a knock at the door. Naruto was investigating the well-polished suit of armor that he had set up in the corner, and Harry was making both of them lunch. He was a very good cook, if he did say so himself, and since Naruto had had a surprising amount of fresh ingredients when they had raided his fridge, Harry was planning on cooking enough to give copious amounts of home-cooked leftovers to his new neighbor. After all, despite being full of energy, Naruto still looked heartbreakingly small and skinny. He picked up the child from where he was still perusing the armor and carried him over to the stove, Naruto giggling as he swung off Harry's arm. Watch this for me for a moment, okay? He asked him. If it starts to smell like it's burning, then turn off the stove. The kid nodded eagerly, seating himself with childish determination and staring intently at the stove, as if he could stare it into behaving. The food shouldn't actually burn in the few minutes he was away, unless the visitor took a very long time, but giving Naruto a task had the dual benefits of distracting him and keeping him out of sight of the apartment entrance. Coming. Harry called, wiping his hands on his apron and conjuring a pair of gloves over his cleanish hands to greet his visitor. He opened the door to a young girl who looked around 13, her brown hair pulled spiky pigtails and a ninja headband tied around her forehead. That, along with the mesh and reinforced clothes, marked her as a ninja. Probably a genin, if he recalled correctly, the lowest rank of active ninja, often hired for menial work. Hello, she said cheerfully. I'm looking for Potter Harry-san. You found him, he replied. What can I do for you? I have a message for you, she explained, handing him a sealed envelope. The corner was stamped with a circle with the kanji for doctor inside. From the hospital, I assume? She nodded, hair bouncing enthusiastically. Am I to send an answer back with you? She hesitated, one hand coming up to rub the back of her head sheepishly. I think so. I'm not sure. I wasn't told what sort of message it was. There was something strange about the whole situation. After last night, Harry hadn't been surprised to see Anbu guards around the building in the morning, and it hadn't looked like they were planning to let anyone in. And when the girl had handed over the missive, he'd sensed a layer of chakra emanating from her skin. If ninjutsu hadn't changed too much in the time since he'd last visited this realm, that meant she had a glamour on. But if he could sense it, the Anbu would have been able to sense it as well, and she was still allowed in the building. That meant she actually was a ninja, if disguised for some reason, and probably safe enough to let inside. "Would you like to come in?" he offered, making a snap decision and stepping back from the doorway. "I don't want to make you wait in the hall as I look this over." "I don't mind," she protested half-heartedly. "I insist." He trailed off expectantly. "Oh. My name's Haruka," she told him when she realized what he was waiting for. "I insist, Haruka-san. Have you eaten yet? You're just in time for lunch." He cast a small summoning charm, pulling the smell from the kitchen to waft out the door. The girl's nose twitched as it reached her. "Only until you have an answer." Barry gestured her to the sofa and pushed the door closed behind her. He walked into the kitchen without waiting for an answer. Naruto was still watching the stove intently, but he was throwing occasional nervous glances towards the living room where the girl was sitting. "Would you set the table, Naruto-kun? It looks like we're going to have a guest for lunch, so 3 places." "Sure." Naruto jumped off the stool. He'd helped put away the dishes earlier, so Harry trusted him to know where everything was. Harry grabbed the teapot, which was already brewing, and teacups, put them on a tray, and returned to his other guest. She was sitting a little more stiffly now, clearly having heard the conversation in the kitchen. "I really don't want to intrude." "You don't have to." Harry waved a hand to cut off her protests. "I'm sure that Naruto-kun won't mind having company for lunch. It would be lonely with just the 2 of us." She subsided reluctantly, not seeming to want to explain that she might mind Naruto's company when it was clear the boy was a guest as well. The living room was silent, except for the faint clinks of Naruto setting the table in the other room and the crinkle of paper as he opened the letter. "Dear Potter Harry. As a recent immigrant of Konohagakure pending full citizenship, you may soon be eligible for a Konoha medical plan. To confirm your eligibility and possible benefits, please report to the hospital at your earliest possible convenience for a thorough medical exam. The information to be obtained includes blood type, vaccinations history, physical activity level, and family medical history. If these records are transferable from your hometown, please contact us and we will help you arrange the transfer. Medical Association of Konoha." Barry frowned inwardly. Why would they, whoever they were, send a disguised ninja for this? He definitely wasn't planning to go, anyways. He'd never need the hospital, and he wasn't going to let anyone test his blood. Who knew what would turn up? Do you have an answer for me?" Questions. "You're new to Konoha, right?" the girl asked quietly, noticing how Harry's eyes were no longer moving back and forth. "I'll think about it. Meanwhile, let's have lunch." "But..." "Lunch?" Hiruzen glanced up at the knock on his door. "Enter," he called. A small female genin with pigtails poked her head into the doorway, then slowly shuffled inside. "Ah, welcome back. Close the door behind you please." The girl nodded and pulled the heavy door shut, straining at it a bit. She looked at him questioningly. The genial, grandfatherly smile he used to deal with a younger ninja fell from his face, a slightly impatient expression replacing it. "You can drop the act now, Anbu-san." There wasn't so much a puff of smoke as a whisper. This particular ninja had always been very good at the basics. The image of a young teen melted into an older one, a male this time, wearing the standard Anbu uniform and a painted mask. Hiruzen gave him a skeptical look. "I told you this was an errand, not a mission. There was no reason to get your full kit out when you're supposed to be on recovery leave. The medical staff will be after you for this and after me for asking you to do this in the first place. Mask off, Dolphin." The young man removed it, revealing a tanned face with a scar running across the bridge of his nose. He looked rather sheepish. "I still can't believe that you assigned me the same Anbu name as my actual name." The Hokage was unapologetic. "And nobody else would believe it either, which is why it's such a good codename. Sit down, for goodness sake. You're supposed to be resting." Haruka sat obediently. "It's not a physical injury, Hokage-sama. The medics just say I'll have trouble accessing my chakra for a while. It's fine if I stand. It's also fine if you sit, Haruka-kun. I've known you since you were a troublesome prankster brat. I can tolerate some informality from you. It's only the 2 of us in here, anyways." The teenager looked surprised. Hiruzen could practically hear him wondering what could possibly need such privacy. "Although," he continued, slightly reprimanding now, "it seems you're starting to pick up other people's bad habits. Almost an hour to deliver a single message." Haruka rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "I guess Kakashi-senpai's rubbing off on me. I'll have to be more careful." "Please do," Hiruzen requested. "If his bad habits start infecting everyone else, nothing will ever get done in this village. But enough chatter, what took you so long? I believe all I asked you to do was to deliver the letter and convince him that it's in his best interests to accept." You were to convince him it was standard procedure, nothing you'd need armor for, and nothing that should take more than a quarter of an hour. Iruka visibly squared his shoulders and straightened his back. You said he was an unknown, Hokage-sama. That alone is enough to warrant armor. As for the Tima invited me to lunch with him and the Uzumaki child. I should have refused, but for some reason I did not. I tried to leave earlier, beauty have no excuse. I apologize. Hiruzen resisted the urge to fassip him. You were late because a civilian convinced you to have lunch with him. The teen squirmed in his seat, posture relaxing when it seemed the Hokage wasn't too angry. He just wouldn't let me refuse. And it smelled really, really good. Did you at least get an answer from him? Hiruzen crossed his fingers beneath his desk for luck. Potter-san was a tricky one. Iruka opened his mouth to answer and closed it again. Opened it. Closed it. I thought I did, but he said he'd think about it. By the time lunch was over, I took the first opportunity to leave. I must have forgotten to get a final answer from him. Hiruzen rubbed at his temple. It was too early in the day to deal with this, he decided, ignoring the fact that it was already the afternoon. It was a long shot, anyways, he sighed. Iruka frowned in confusion. Is he really only a civilian, Hokage-sama? I couldn't get a read on him at all. And his apartment is strange. He's not really. Hiruzen told him. But the main reason you couldn't get away is probably that you're simply too nice. It's one of the reasons I'm pulling you off of Anbu rotation, other than your injury. It's a weakness in the field. Iruka opened his mouth to protest. Kindness was not a weakness. In the field, Iruka-kun, he repeated. Don't make that face, we both know you don't like field work that much anyways. Iruka looked down. It's my duty. To serve my village and defend it to the best of my ability. Hiruzen sat back and took a long look at him. Iruka had been 10 when he'd lost his parents, not yet old enough to have the support and semi-independence of a genin team. The then preteen had started seeking attention, playing skilled enough pranks to attract the attention of one of the senior board Anbu members, who Hiruzen had eventually given permission to take Iruka under his tutelage. Hiruzen had acted as emotional support for the teen as he recovered and matured, and the ninja was definitely one of his favorites. Not that a Kage was really supposed to play favorites, but everyone knew they did. He tried to shelter the teenager as a result, keeping him away from the more questionable sides of Anbu. Iruka knew of child assassinations, without a doubt, but he'd never had to take part in one. Hiruzen meant to keep it that way. Iruka was, after all, one of the few shinobi who had managed to make it over the age of 18, with their hearts still genuinely kind. He had also gotten it into his head at some point that the best way for him to serve the village was as a mediocre Anbu and not something like a teacher, which Hiruzen was sure he would excel at. He set his face into an impassive mask, changing the subject away from personal matters. Did you learn anything at all of interest? Report. Iruka lifted his head to face him. Everything. I'm not sure what's relevant. Hiruzen nodded. The back of his mind registered Iruka's switch to his mission voice with amusement. Borsan recognized me and let me into the building after light questioning, as he was aware that I was not on the guard rotation. I explained that I was there on your orders and provided the mission passcode. I then hinged into a female genin and delivered the missive. Potter-san insisted that I stay for lunch. I was soon made aware that Uzumaki was also having lunch with Potter-san, but was unable to excuse myself until after the meal, after which I returned here to report. Potter-san is clearly foreign, with a fairly large quantity of unknown furnishings in his apartment, most seeming to be for decoration. There are books on his shelf labeled in either a foreign language or a code. I did not recognize it. He is on good terms with Uzumaki, treating him as one would treat a normal child. He claims to be well-traveled, telling a story about visiting Suna during lunch. He did not mention any specific time frame, so the story is unverifiable. He acts mostly like a civilian, but he is hard to deny and I suspect that he hides his true emotions. I sensed no chakra from him. He wore a pair of gloves the whole time I was there, even while eating, which I found strange. And Naruto? Prodded Hiruzen. Iruka's face twitched. He acted like a normal child. He seemed happy. Very fond of Potter-san, treating him a bit like an older brother. Seeing him, you'd never imagine. Hiruzen watched Iruka trail off, his face full of remembered sadness dulled with time. It looked like at least one of his gambles was going to pay off. Naruto and Iruka were both pranksters and orphans and, in Hiruzen's humble opinion, lonely. He had figured that if the two of them met in the right circumstances, they would relate to each other enough to become some sort of friends. He was well aware that the majority of the village's population did not like the blonde child, and so he was worried about what would happen when Naruto started school. But this way, with Iruka already fond of Naruto, he would have at least one ally in the school system. Now all he had to do was to get Iruka to actually join the school system. But that was what his fancy hat was for. He drummed his fingers on the desk, making Iruka start and continue his report. The primary objective was only half completed. The message was delivered, but an answer was not received. Potter-san did not appear to doubt its authenticity. The secondary objective, level 1 observation, was completed and reported. Iruka waited stiffly after he finished. I believe that I told you that this was more of a sensitive errand than an official mission, Hiruzen told the teenager. So there is no formal rank, and there will be no mark on your record. But I am a bit disappointed with your results. You, acting as an Anbu member of Konoha, were outmaneuvered by a civilian. There will have to be a penalty. Iruka's face fell, and the Hokage resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Ninjas were all such drama queens. Don't look so nervous, it's nothing serious, he informed him. I'm assigning you as a teacher assistant at the academy until your chakra system recovers. If anyone asks, you're a Chunin who volunteered, understand? Iruka nodded meekly. And unless the teacher decides you deserve it, you're not getting paid. He nodded again. And I'm confiscating your limited edition Icha. Iruka froze. Wait, what? There was a loud bang, and a small rumble traveled through the floor of his office, sending ripples across the surface of his tea. The ripples would have faded, of course, except his boss was playing his favorite fanfare. It was still wonderful tea even if it was rippled, though, and the teapot refilled itself with whatever he wanted it to, whenever he wanted to. There were perks to working as Death's personal paperwork minion. "Me-kun, teach me to how to ninja." Still, there were times when he wondered if it was truly worth it. This was one of them. He took his time stamping the top file of his never-ending stack of work and only looked up after he sorted it away. "Hello boss. You're visiting an awful lot lately." Barry stuck out his tongue. "You don't have to sound so excited to see me, me-kun. I know that I'm the highlight of your day month week here, you don't need to yell it in my face." Minato kept his best deadpan expression on his face. This was the immortal master of death and sometimes he worried about the multiverse. "So excited, boss." Barry beamed at him and Minato couldn't resist the corner of his mouth twitching into a smile in response, which just made Harry smile harder. The man was like a child most of the time and it was oddly endearing. He blamed his paternal instincts, which really had nobody else to latch onto after he died. Spirits forbid he dote on someone like Grell. In the doorway, Harry was bouncing up and down. "Teach me how to ninja, me-kun," he demanded again. "What's the magic word, Harry?" Harry rolled his eyes. "Please teach me how to ninja." Minato nodded in approval. Manners were important. "Why do you need to learn to ninja, boss?" "Because people in my new town don't know how to magic, only ninja. So I need to learn to ninja to fit in." Minato felt a shiver of foreboding work its way down his spine and distracted himself by pleading, "Please stop calling it ninjing." "No. Nope. Don't feel like it." Minato raised an eyebrow. Harry mimicked him. "Say, boss, what's your new town called?" he asked after a minute of stalemate, knowing that Harry was probably going to continue using the word ninja out of pure stubbornness. "Hanahagakure." He knew it. "Boss, why are you living in Konoha?" He felt sorry for his village. Harry was quite a handful. "Well, you sold your soul to protect it, so I decided to see what all the fuss was about. Please don't do anything bad to it. I like that village. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Naruto-kun would be sad if I did anything bad to it and I don't want to make the kid sad. He's a good kid." "Naruto?" asked Minato, torn between worry and curiosity. "Naruto knows you." Barry puffed his chest out with pride. "Naruto and I are friends. And neighbors, too. Which is good, because the villagers don't like him very much." Minato frowned. "What?" Barry hesitated, then said bluntly, "The majority of your village hates him. Shopkeepers barely let him buy anything, parents don't let him play with their kids, you know it's bad when some of the kids' warmest relationships are with masked Anbu members." Minato wasn't a genius for nothing. It took him only a moment to put the pieces together. "They know about the fox." "MMMHM. Everyone knows." Barry considered it. "Not everyone, I think. There's a law against talking about it or telling anyone about it so the children and recent immigrants don't know. But they pick up on the general, stay the hell away from that blonde kid vibe, so they don't really help." Minato groaned in frustration. "And I suppose that when I told Sandame that I wanted Naruto seen as a hero, he decided to skip over the part." "You said that? That's kind of incredibly naive of you." Harry looked skeptically at him, acting, for once, the age he appeared. "I figured that the usual Hokage hero worship would carry over to my son, so the villagers would treat him well," he explained. Harry avoided his eyes. "Yeah, about that they decided to keep that secret." Minato resisted the urge to bang his head on the desk. Then he remembered that he was dead and not longer a Hokage and didn't have to keep up any appearances. "Thunk. Me-kun, I know you can't get concussions anymore, but that still looked kind of painful." "My village is full of idiots." "Hey," protested Harry. "That's where I live." "Right, sorry boss." My village is full of idiots and a bored death god. Hey. That's pretty accurate, actually. Thunk. Stop that, me-kun. You'll keep an eye on him, won't you? On Naruto. I don't have anything to make a deal with, though. Barry smiled. Naruto-kun's my friend now, me-kun. All you have to do is teach me how to ninja. No strings. No strings. You didn't ask me to do this. Just teach me. I knew this ninja once who could make this amazing fire dragon thing that didn't automatically try to break free of your control and murder you. Does that mean that if you make a fire dragon? MMMHM. Fine. I'll teach you, but please try not to burn down my village. That was one time. Maybe more than once. I'll try. I'm going on a picnic and I'm bringing a pollux. Can I bring a sword? No, but I can bring a katana. Can I bring a katana? Yes, actually. Can I bring a pollux? Nope. Can I bring a tiger? No, but I'm bringing the Himera brothers. Can I bring Hana-kun? No. Ha. Like you could stop her. Just play the game, Katetsu. There's nothing else to do. Hey, it's your fault we got gate duty again. Can I bring Hey, Izumo, is that who I think it is? You don't seriously think I'm going to fall for that, do you? I'm serious. Look. Oh. Yeah. Oh. Where's the messenger? Ha, thanks. And here's pen and paper. You're so lazy. Write the note yourself. What do I say? Jiraiya-sama's home. Sandaime-sama will take care of the rest. Teaching Harry to ninja, it turned out, was not a matter of teaching him ninjutsu, but teaching him what ninjutsu looked like so he could fake it with magic. Minato would cast a jutsu from his repertoire, which, while not as great as the Sandaime's, was still impressive. Harry would copy his hand signs and reproduce the effects with wandless magic. The latest jutsu, some sort of wind wave, was still pushing across the room when Minato slumped to the floor with semi-grace. They were still in Harry's office because Minato couldn't leave, but the desk was pushed to a wall and Harry had done something strange to the walls to make the room around 5 times bigger. He'd also carpeted the extension in dirt and grass and decorated it with random rocks and logs, creating a result rather reminiscent of a Konoha training ground. Minato dug his fingers into the grass as he caught his breath. It felt incredibly real, with the slight tugging resistance of actual roots as a few blades were dug from the ground. Can we take a short break, boss? Harry ignored him and folded his fingers into the signs at a civilian speed, making another gust that swept through the room and chased after Minato's. Does that look right? He asked, tilting his head quizzically at it. Minato eyed it critically before shaking his head. This one's supposed to be more like a moving wall than a constant stream, if that makes sense. Can you shape it differently? Harry nodded and extended his hand with his palm perpendicular to the floor. The resulting blast of air overturned a few trees, all of Minato's paperwork, and made the fake sun sway back and forth from where it was hanging from the ceiling. Harry wasn't even breathing hard and he'd been doing things like that for several hours. Really? He asked, looking in despair at the destruction. Even if he really should have expected infinite power in a god, it still made him feel like all the strength he'd built up over the years was pointless. Also, he'd probably be the one who'd have to clean it up later. Harry beamed at him and nodded. Let me catch my breath for a moment, Minato insisted. Harry flopped to the grass beside him. You don't really have to, you know, he said. It's not like you have to breathe now that you're dead. It's just habit. Minato rolled his eyes. That doesn't mean that I have limitless power. Unlike some people. Harry looked at him earnestly. But you don't have limits now, he insisted. The only reason that you're tired is because you're convinced that you should be tired. I'm tired because I think I'm tired. It made sense in a way, especially considering the rather backwards rules of wherever Harry's office existed. Minato had given up using actual logic on most of it, it just didn't work. Harry nodded. Just concentrate really hard on having your full strength and it'll happen. You're technically just a soul now, you have no bodily limits. Minato closed his eyes. It was a bit like defeating a Jinjutsu, he decided, focusing his entire being on the conviction that his fatigue wasn't real. After a while, it was successfully ignored to the point that he couldn't feel it anymore. He opened his eyes with resolve and rose to his feet. And failed, one of his legs wobbling under him and collapsing, causing him to fall back onto the ground in an extremely undignified way. Beside him, Harry snorted. The ex-Hokage turned baleful eyes to the man sitting next to him and accused, you tricked me. Maybe, Harry snickered, you didn't believe hard enough. You're not very convincing when you're laughing, boss, Minato sighed. Harry made no attempt at reining in his amusement. Was anything you said true at all? Of course. Harry had laughed himself into hiccuping. You have no bodily limits, but your chakra here is based more on spiritual energy than physical energy. You essentially substitute the spiritual for physical, using your chakra for conversion. That means that if you run out of chakra, you can't move. you should have seen your face. The Master of Death rolled onto his side, still chuckling weakly. Annoying brat, thought Minato fondly, ignoring Harry's actual age. Well, at least he made a good student. Harry picked everything up with enviable ease, despite his claims that most of what Minato was teaching him was completely new. It was actually quite annoying, because he dedicated years when he was alive to things Harry could pick up in half an hour. Let's move on to theory, Minato decided, hoping that there was some way to salvage his ninja pride. I don't think you need to practice your collateral damage anymore. You've got it figured out pretty well. But me-kun, it's fun. Whined Harry. Exactly, murmured part of his mind with vindictive glee. Out loud, he simply started, the purpose of hand seals is to guide chakra through certain paths in the body, which changes the final effect of the jutsu. The more complicated the jutsu, the more hand seals are needed, although parts of the sequence can be eliminated with practice. Harry groaned. Time ran oddly between different dimensions, but essentially only one night passed in the elemental nations while Harry was having his lessons. When Harry gave up on theory, it was midnight. When he almost burned down his office for the third time, it was 1:30 in the morning. And back in Konoha, at 1:37 in the morning, there was a knock on the Hokage's window, which was, for once, closed. The Sandame looked at one of his anbu, fingers twitching into the signs of well-practiced code. Check. If toad. Open. The anbu went to the window and stared out of it for almost a minute, impassive as the taps on the glass continued. Hiruzen was about to ask her what was happening when she finally opened it, letting long spikes of white hair peek through the window. The hair was followed by a spiked headband, a bulky scroll, and a pair of Jetta sandals, until a man was standing inside his office in a rather ridiculous entrance pose. I, Jiraiya-sama, the mighty Toad Sage, have arrived. He declared. A collective twitch ran through Hiruzen and his guards as they were forced to remember Potter-san's ridiculous self-introduction of the night before, but Jiraiya didn't notice. Instead, he asked, Sensei, do you wire all your anbu being passive-aggressive to me? Hiruzen ticked an eyebrow at him. Actually, it's just the females. Do you know why they're being passive-aggressive to you? The lecherous smile spread its way across Jiraiya's reddening face. Well, in that case ow. The anbu that had opened the window had smacked him across the back of the head and resumed her position as if she'd never moved at all, exuding innocence. The only thing that betrayed her movement was the sway of her hair as it fell back into place. Sorry, Sensei, looks like I can't, Jiraiya apologized while making the signs for drinks, later, talk. Hiruzen nodded his acceptance even as Jiraiya winked at the anbu and continued, deeds are so feisty, aren't they? I like that in a woma ow. The scroll bounced off his head and onto the floor. This time, she wasn't even pretending that she hadn't hit him, glaring at him with enough distaste that it could be felt through her mask. She shook her finger at him in the manner that all women, but especially Kunoichi, seemed to eventually perfect, somehow managing to convey, don't you dare, you incompetent imbecilic fool, in a single gesture. Can she do that? On-duty anbu can't do that, can they? Whined Jiraiya. Fortunately for her, then, she's not here on duty. She's here for the same reason you are, Potter Harry. Have a seat, Jiraiya. We have things to discuss. He gestured to the armchair in the middle of the room. Jiraiya hesitated, then sat. Since when did you have an armchair in here? Since I couldn't get rid of it, Hiruzen explained to him. The man I summoned you about, well after I talked to him last night in this office, he left behind that chair. It's completely stuck to the floor and any attempts to remove it by force are met with he flung a kunai at the armrest. It sunk into the chair halfway up the blade with a strange squelching noise before bouncing out the way it came. Hiruzen caught it by the ring with a twirl and tucked it back into its pouch. What the? Slipped from Jiraiya's mouth with all the elegance and dignity inherent to an elite Konoha shinobi. There was some very interesting potential in something impervious to weaponry like that, but for most intents and purposes, it appeared to be nothing more than a very comfy chair. If you try to smash it, it plays music, offered Hiruzen, his mouth quirked in reluctant amusement. I'm tempted to try setting it on fire, but I'm rather fond of this office. Right. Jiraiya frowned in confusion, trying to make sense of the situation before giving up and deciding to throw his common sense out the window instead. Why don't you start from the beginning? Hiruzen agreed. He told Jiraiya about what had happened the night before, listing off on his fingers the various hints that Potter had carelessly dropped, most of which did nothing to solve the mystery of who he was. How exactly did traveling magician connect to paperwork, then connect to Fuinjutsu? He described how the only ones who'd so much as seen him before were Naruto-kun and the Anbu who had found them, but Potter still claimed to have known Minato enough to be friends and give him a ridiculous nickname. The claim had some proof Naruto had relayed to Hiruzen the stories that Potter had told him, and they were real events that showed the late Hokage's life, personality, and childhood. Also rather concerning was Potter's power and stealth, particularly the way he had managed to sneak into the village completely undetected twice and then chose to introduce himself to the Hokage, of all people. Worse, nobody in the entire elemental nations or at least Hiruzen's connections had even had a hint of his existence. Even with the Anbu in his office, who had all also encountered Potter, contributing everything they knew, it didn't make much sense at all. "And you let this person become Naruto-kun's next-door neighbor?" asked Jiraiya incredulously. Inoichi-san confirmed that Potter-san never lied, and Potter-san did swear not to harm Naruto, Hiruzen explained. "I don't trust him in everything, but I trust him in that. You were closer with Minato than I was. Did you ever hear anything about this man?" "No," Jiraiya replied, pensive. "He never mentioned him. I've never heard of someone with his abilities either. There's the strange jutsu he used, he tapped his fingers on the armchair meaningfully, the seal, the blood oath. It makes no sense. And what exactly did he mean by magician? There would be whispers of someone this powerful. How did Minato even find him? Natural-born leader? Yes. Spy master? No. Maybe he found him by accident," suggested Hiruzen. "Accidentally threw one of his Hiraishin markers into his house, or some such thing." Jiraiya wanted to sigh. That was actually a perfectly reasonable possibility. Maybe. But a sealing master capable of helping Minato? As the resident Fuinjutsu expert, have you ever heard of someone like that? Other than Kushina, of course. Jiraiya shook his head. Sealing masters are actually pretty easy to keep hidden. All they have to do is make sure nobody sees them scripting anything and pretend all the seals they have were given to them by someone else. And they're usually capable of silencing anyone who knows too much. Literally. One hand drifted unconsciously to his throat, where he'd accidentally tested one such seal when he was a chunin. In the end, his sensei had to enlist the help of one of the older jounin before they managed to get it off. What of the sealing arts of Yuzushi Agakure? We never knew what happened to all the survivors of that village, Hiruzen pointed out. It's possible he could be one of them. Probably not in Uzumaki, with that hair, but you never know, Naruto's a blonde. They could even be related, somehow. It would explain why Potter already seems so attached to him. Jiraiya turned the possibility over in his mind. If he traveled after Yuzashio's destruction, that would explain what Dolphin-san saw in his apartment. But it doesn't explain how my network has never heard of him or where his other powers come from. The Hokage sighed. This is going nowhere. Everything is circumstantial speculation. We don't have any way of knowing anything for certain except for what the man chooses to tell us outright, and even that is suspect. He seemed a bit mad, signed the red-headed Anbu. Dangerous potential. Hiruzen nodded. Naruto is the only thing keeping that man from harming the village. He doesn't seem to have any reason for doing anything other than the favor he claims to be doing Minato. Everyone in the office took a moment to consider that. Considering the fact that they didn't know anything about the details of said favor or the circumstances surrounding it, it wasn't very reassuring. "Is he safe to have around, my godson, sensei?" asked Jiraiya after a while. "I gave up seeing Naruto-kun for his own safety, so he couldn't be linked to either me or Minato. That becomes pointless if you let some random stranger endanger him. Potter Harry's a ghost. He doesn't exist. That, above all, makes me nervous." "It's not Naruto I'm worried about," Hiruzen said. "Naruto's safer with that man around. He's oddly protective of a child he's only met twice. It's the village that I'm unsure about. If we can influence Potter-san into caring for the village, we will have one more powerful, if unknown, element defending Konoha. But if he grows to dislike Konoha, which I'm worried will happen if the civilians keep shunning Naruto, then he'll have to be neutralized. If we can," he added silently, remembering how he hadn't noticed Potter-san until he'd purposefully made his presence known. If the man had wanted to assassinate him, then there was a chance he wouldn't be alive to sit in his office discussing him. "Did you consider banning him from the village?" Hiruzen shook his head. "I'm a good judge of character. Potter-san, I think, deserves a chance. For now, at least, he stays." He chose not to mention Orochimaru, his last great failure of judgment. Jiraiya was probably already thinking of him, anyways. His students snorted. "Fine. But if he starts talking to snakes or something, I reserve the right to say I told you so." Hiruzen just gave him a look. It was the sort of look that teachers gave to their particularly unruly, idiotic students, and Jiraiya still wasn't completely able to suppress a Pavlovian shudder in response to it. He'd encountered that look way too many times as a genin. "Just see if you can do anything about that ridiculous chair," Hiruzen told him. "We might as well get something done while you're here." Naruto knew that he was pretty much the pranking god of Konoha. But not even he could plan a prank and gather materials without a single Anbu noticing while they were living in his apartment. Fortunately, he had a workaround. "Anbu Nai-san," he whined, planting his most innocent doe-eyed look on his face. "Can you do me a favor?" Predictably, the Anbu put down his book and immediately starting to pay attention, waiting for his request. Naruto changed his face to shy and nervous and beckoned the Anbu closer so that he could whisper in his ear. With a universal air of adults humoring small children and thinking they didn't notice, the Anbu complied. "Anbu Nai-san," Naruto whispered, "if you tell anyone about my prank, I'll tell Hokage that you've been reading to me from your pervy orange books and drawing me pictures from them, and then Hokage will castrate you. So keep it a secret." He didn't actually know what castrate meant, but AM-san at the ramen stand had said it to a pervy customer once, and all the men nearby had turned pale. It seemed like a good threat because the Anbu gave a really quiet pan nodded his agreement. "Yay!" cheered Naruto loudly into the man's ear, ignoring the Anbu's wince. "I'm going to visit Harry-san now, and it was okay when I went yesterday, so it's okay that I go today, right?" "Right." He waited half a second for an answer. The Anbu seemed oddly stiff and frozen and didn't do anything before deciding that the man wasn't stopping him, which was as good as permission in itself. He bounced across the hall and knocked loudly on his new neighbor's door. Harry-san answered the door looking slightly charred. There was a streak of charcoal smeared across his forehead and his hair looked even messier than usual, though Naruto wasn't quite sure how that was possible. One of the elbows of his shirt was burnt off. His pants had ash-covered streaks on it where it looked like he had wiped his hands, but oddly enough, his gloves were perfectly clean. Naruto sniffed the air. "Harry-san, have you been playing with fire?" "Well, actually, I wouldn't exactly call it playing. It was very important, legitimate research that had absolutely nothing to do with how awesome explosions are." He nodded to himself. That sounded about right. Naruto gave him the doe eyes. Harry suddenly became intensely interested in the air above Naruto's hair. "I thought we were pranking buddies now," pouted Naruto. "I want to blow things up too." He buried his nervousness in the pit of his stomach. Apart from the desire to simply make fun of Harry, he found himself worried that the man had decided that he didn't want to be friends after all. Maybe Harry had thought about it and decided that he didn't like him after all. For some reason, that seemed to happen with a lot of his friends. Harry looked down at him and something in Naruto's face must have struck a chord in him because he smiled a quiet, oddly sympathetic smile. "Ah, I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. I should have asked you to join me." He straightened up before bending at the waist into an extravagant flourishing bow. "To make it up to you," he proclaimed, "I shall be your servant for the day. What can I do for you?" Naruto did his best to suppress his giggles at Harry's silly declaration. It didn't help that Harry had frozen at the bottom of his bow and was now making silly faces at him. The nervousness from before was forgotten. "You can make it up to me by helping me with my prank," decided Naruto, sticking his nose imperiously into the air, like the ninjas with dark hair and funny eyes like to do. "As you wish, future Hokage-sama." Harry-san's eyes twinkled as he bowed Naruto into his apartment. At that, Naruto gave up on suppressing his smile and grinned from ear to ear. It was very nice, he decided, having someone who believed in him. "So, this is what I want to do," explained Naruto as he jumped onto Harry's ridiculously comfy couch. Harry settled beside him in a more dignified manner, setting a tray of biscuits and tea on the coffee table. Naruto grabbed a notebook from the coffee table that had not existed a moment ago. Harry was glad he'd managed to deconstruct some of the spells on the room of requirement before he'd had to leave home and started sketching out a picture. Harry leaned over to look. It was quite artistic. Abstract, even. "Are those bubbles?" "Obviously. And those are. Like this, see?" Naruto another sheet and scribbled a quick diagram. It actually helped. "Oh, I get it. So when they. Aha. And then they." Harry mimed a small explosion. "Exactly. And that is. Jello. Jello. Jello." Harry sat back against his seat, impressed. "You, my friend, are a genius," Harry decided. Naruto beamed at the acknowledgement. "So, can you help?" "Most people would say it's impossible," said Harry slowly. Naruto started to slump but then turned and looked curiously at Harry. "Wait, most?" Harry winked. "I'm not most people." Naruto grinned, practically bouncing in place in a direct contrast to his mood of a few seconds ago. "So you can do it," he realized. Harry nodded, smiling, and made another silly, dramatic bow. It was made even more ridiculous by the fact that he was still sitting on the couch and didn't bother standing up first. "Your wish is my command, good sir." And Naruto trailed off, looking at the wall and the floor, and then finally, nervously, at Harry, who was waiting patiently for him to continue. "And can you teach me how? Even just a little bit, I want to learn." Harry thought quickly. It would mean he'd have to substitute something ninjish for magic, but Fuinjutsu was remarkably versatile, and even if he didn't know any Fuinjutsu theory, he could just teach Naruto to write in Celestial. He was pretty sure that children were supposed to be good at absorbing languages. "It will be a lot of work," he warned the child. "I'm not afraid of hard work, Harry-sensei," declared Naruto. His blue eyes were strong and determined, and he met Harry's assessing gaze dead on. Harry smiled. How in the multiverse could he possibly say no to that? Your father would be proud of you, he told Naruto, and watched his eyes light up with amazement. He always loved Fuinjutsu, the sealing arts, which are what I'm going to be teaching you. Because the sealing arts are like magic, and Harry definitely had the authority to say that, and you can do anything with them if you're good enough. Naruto gave an ooh of amazement. Harry slipped into lecture mode, something that he'd learned back when he was a teacher. The most basic idea of Fuinjutsu is that it is a command in the celestial tongue. It's rare for a human to be able to speak it, so the majority of seals are written, but someone fluent in celestial would be able to actually sing a seal into existence. A seal is made up of two parts: form and energy. The form is the actual shape of the symbols and determines what the seal can do, while the energy determines how powerful the seal is or how long it lasts. Most seals are capable of powering themselves off of natural energy once they've been properly initiated, but to give them a starting boost, people infuse them with chakra using a variety of different mediums. Are you following so far? Naruto's face was scrunched up in concentration. They're another language written down, and they use chakra. Do they need, which accolade chakra control? Well, he got the gist of it at least. No, you don't have to worry about that. The seal shapes it automatically. You acknowledged Naruto. His eyes were slightly unfocused. Harry had the feeling that at this point, theory was probably a lost cause. The kid was still, well, a kid. How about this, Harry suggested. I'll get the supplies we'll need, and tomorrow I'll show you some practical stuff. Naruto perked up immediately. Can we make things explode? Harry chuckled. Of course. The first civilian he saw looked at him strangely when she saw him emerging from Naruto's apartment building, so Harry ducked into an alley, slipped out of reality, and walked through a wall. He let himself reappear a few streets over, watching with amusement as a grouchy shopkeeper skirted him while muttering about those damn ninjas getting in the way of humble hardworking folk. Harry oriented himself vaguely towards the distant spires of the Hokage Tower and started walking. The village looked different in the aftermath of the celebrations. Most of the booths had been taken down, although some stores still had outdoor displays out, bragging about novelties and limited edition wares. The ground was strewn lightly with litter food wrappings, flyers, and the occasional paper fox mask. The people around him felt filled with quiet contentment, falling back into the patterns of everyday life after the temporary high of the festival. The way he detected emotions wasn't quite legitimacy, although it had similar effects. Rather, it was an effect of being the master of death. He could sense the souls of the people around him. It wasn't anywhere near as in-depth as a directed legilimens, but it was passive, impossible to turn off, and automatically applied to every person within about 100 meters. That was if he wasn't concentrating. If he chose to focus on a soul he'd felt before, he could feel them pretty much anywhere in the world. Each soul gave a different impression what they were feeling at that moment, their basic character traits, their particular combination of corruption and purity. Harry was just thankful that somehow, being master of death also came with a better memory and immunity to headaches. Also on the bright side, he'd become a much better judge of character since he died. He wandered through the markets, getting sidetracked at food vendors preparing for the lunchtime rush. The smell of roasting meat led him into the middle of a crowded square. The scent of frying dumplings led him back out of it. He didn't actually have any of the local currency, so he took his lunch by charming free samples out of the vendors. Teenage girls, working as cashiers or waitresses, were particularly generous. Harry had the feeling that he might have left a few crushes in his wake. But without names, most people faded quickly from his memory. The souls he actually recognized in the elemental nations, the living ones, at least could be counted on one hand. He paused for half a step when one such soul appeared on the edge of his range. So maybe he didn't know the man's actual name, but he usually tried to keep track of mind readers. Partly because of caution, but also because they were very fun to toy with and sometimes had apoplectic fits about how his existence was impossible. Really, it wasn't as if occlumency was a solely magical skill. All you needed was imagination and discipline. Judging by the recently labeled Professor X's reaction, or lack thereof, it seemed like the elemental nations had already discovered that. It was a pity. Tantrums were so amusing. Still, who was he to deny the man a visit? And he really should figure out the man's name, because so far, he didn't compare to the sheer awesomeness that had been Charles Xavier several dimensions ago, perfectly capable of kicking ass from a wheelchair. With his brain. This mind reader hadn't yet proved himself worthy of being called Professor X. Harry followed the soul to a large cheery yellow-painted store with a profusion of flowers lining the outside walls, windows, doorway, and what he could see of the interior. A large purple sign overhead proclaimed Yamanaka flowers with cute little flowers drawn on it, and Harry mentally awarded the man a few points for willing to be inside. Most of the men he'd known would avoid this shop like the plague. He ducked into the store, triggering the soft, gentle chime of a bell. It was cool and dark compared to the midday heat of the streets and almost completely empty. He liked it, he immediately decided. He'd never been as good at herbology as Neville, but he had always found that there was something relaxing about working with plants, especially ones that weren't trying to kill you. He privately suspected it had something to do with his childhood and long hours spent tending to the garden in peace and quiet. It had been a welcome respite from his family, as his cousin managed to whine and wail his every whim out of Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon inside the house. In one corner of the room, a tiny blonde girl was watering flowers, her childish watering can patterned with a mountain skyline and purple sunsets. Behind the counter was a man who looked to be her father, reclining on a stool with the careless balance of a shinobi. There was a large blue book in his lap, which he was paging through and making occasional notes in. The man looked up when he heard the bell and nodded a silent, slightly absent-minded greeting to where Harry was standing by a row of ferns. Harry noticed the way the man's focus sharpened ever so slightly as he glanced him over and realized that the man's blue-green eyes had no pupils. "Hello," Harry greeted pleasantly. "My name is Potter Harry and I'm new to this village. I'm afraid that I've gotten a little bit turned around and I was hoping that you'd be able to help." The man's face showed no recognition, although Harry still sensed his surprise. "Inoichi Yamanaka," he introduced himself, tucking the book into a drawer, "and this store is Yamanaka Flowers, owned by me and, by extension, the Yamanaka clan. Where were you trying to go?" "Well, I didn't actually have a specific destination in mind," he explained. "I was trying to find a store that sold calligraphy supplies. A quality set for me and a well-stocked beginner's set for my student." The man Inoichi, Harry reminded himself, remained impassive save for an expression of distracted yet polite interest. Harry was impressed. His emotions read as a mix of curiosity and wariness, but not a single sign of them showed in either his expression or his body language. He'd probably figured out for himself who the likeliest candidate for his student had to be. Harry let his estimation of the man rise several notches. "You're at the very edge of the market district now," Inoichi informed him. From there, he gestured with his right arm, "it's mostly residential. Clan compounds, civilian suburbs, and the like. On the other side," he gestured again with his left, "is where you'll find what you're looking for. There's actually a very good hobby shop several blocks down that should have what you're looking for. I could show you, if you like. Ino can mind the shop while I'm gone." The girl in the corner looked up when she heard her name and gave an adorable little wave and smile. Clearly, Konoha didn't have any child labor laws. Then again, they were a ninja village. Also rather obvious was the fact that Inoichi was quite curious about him, curious enough to leave his 6-year-old child in charge of his flower shop in order to further analyze him. Harry mentally shrugged. It could be interesting, and the man couldn't pressure him too much in the crowded marketplace streets. He couldn't really pressure him at all. Inoichi was just a human. And anyways, Harry did want to find those calligraphy supplies, and he wasn't sure he'd be able to find the store on his own without magic. He didn't really have the best sense of direction in the multiverse. He protested a socially acceptable number of times and they set off, Inoichi leaving basic instructions with his daughter to mind the counter and simply ask the store next door for help if she needed any. They'd scarcely left the shop before Harry gave into temptation and asked, with a cheeky smile, "A flower shop, Professor X?" He gave a non-committal hum. "So you recognized me, I wondered about that." Inoichi's voice was unconcerned, perhaps even friendly. "I'm mostly retired now, though. These days, I'm nothing more than a humble shopkeeper." "A family man?" prodded Harry. "Your daughter is a lovely child." Inoichi smiled warmly. "Ino is a treasure." His smile stayed on his face, but his expression chilled with unspoken danger. "If anything ever happened to her or to this village that we live in, I'd hunt the one who did it to the ends of the earth." "I'd never harm an innocent," Harry reassured Inoichi. He'd always had a soft spot for people who could threaten someone effectively, while smiling they appealed to his sense of irony. There was no reason to worry Inoichi unnecessarily. "I don't particularly want to harm anyone. I made a promise to Mikun and I intend to keep it. That's it." "I see." That promise was something Inoichi didn't want to get into, so he asked instead how Harry had recognized him when he was masked and masking his chakra signal the last time they met. Surprisingly, he actually answered. "I recognized your soul," explained Harry. "I'm a shinobi. Some people would tell you that I don't have one," remarked Inoichi with wry amusement. "Of course you have one," insisted Harry, oddly earnest. "It's what makes you human. No matter what you do, unless you willingly sacrifice it, that will never change. The soulless are unpleasant." For a moment, his eyes looked even older than usual, reflecting inward on some dark and painful remembrance. Inoichi looked at him strangely, but nodded his acceptance. The strange civilian spoke as if he actually knew what he was talking about, and Inoichi found himself wanting to believe him. For now, he would let the man be. He was no longer an Anbu member sworn to discover men's deepest darkest secrets, and he liked Harry despite himself, brief though their acquaintance may be. They walked in comfortable small talk the rest of the way to the shop, Inoichi pointing out shops and restaurants as they passed. Eventually they arrived at a small, but well-maintained looking store. There were a few calligraphy scrolls hanging in the windows, along with a seal that Harry mentally translated to read music and a rich display of brushes. "Here we are," announced Inoichi. "The owner is a good man and a bit of a connoisseur, he'll be able to get you what you want. I believe that this is even where Jiraiya-sama gets his fuinjutsu supplies. And his calligraphy supplies as well, I suppose." The slight amusement in that phrase made it obvious that Inoichi didn't believe Harry was interested in solely calligraphy. "Jiraiya?" Harry asked. He could swear that he'd heard that name before. Jiraiya the Toad Sage is a sealing master, famous throughout all of the elemental nations to shinobi and civilians alike. "I'm surprised you haven't heard of him." Inoichi smiled a small, satisfied smile, as if Harry had just clarified something for him. "But then again, you are a very unusual person, Potter-san." "Just Harry-san, please," Harry said, almost as a reflex and barely remembering to add the honorific. "And where I come from, I'm really quite normal." Considering the others that worked with him in the interdimensional bureau, it was the strict truth. "Harry-san it is, then." Inoichi looked at him, considering. "In my experience, there are only two types of people who are so disrespectful to shinobi, especially the Hokage. There are the foolish, and there are the powerful, and I have to wonder, Harry-san, which one?" Inoichi shook his head, as if shaking the thought away. "In any case, if you need any help settling into the village, feel free to come to the shop. I'd be happy to help." Harry blinked at the abrupt subject change, and Inoichi took the opportunity to start disappearing into the crowd, waving a farewell as he did so. Harry, amused and slightly bemused as well, waved back. "Maybe I will," he answered, feeling a smile make its way across his face. Mind readers, after all, were such amusing people. Everything had probably started when the creepy scientist stabbed him in the chest. If he was feeling particularly difficult, he could claim that it started when the Hokage gave him the mission, or when the scientist decided to be creepy in the first place, or when his parents met, or when the Sage of Six Paths taught his kids what, exactly, chakra was. But it was easier to just blame the scientist. It had happened a few weeks ago, on an Anbu mission to the Land of Water. They'd heard that there was someone experimenting on the corpses from the Bloodline massacres, and Konohagakure had decided that they had to be shut down, with extreme prejudice. Partially because of ethics, partially because of clan politics, and partially because of the fear that Kiri would actually figure out something useful. Ethics, for one, was a pretty small part of it. The mission had started off rather well. The strongest guards had been posted on the perimeter of the compound and not on the scientists themselves, and their squad had been able to dispose of them without anyone inside noticing a thing. Sparrow had sealed the ones still alive into silence, and Bear had simply melted through the stone door to let them inside. Apparently, breaking locks open set off alarms, but gaping holes in the doors themselves went ignored. They'd advanced through the hallways, which had been saturated with killing intent. Haruka blamed that for the way he didn't notice the scientist until it was too late. What kind of Anbu let a civilian get the drop on him? But the man's killing intent had faded into the background, and the facility had apparently been investigating something that made people invisible, and all his excuses just ended up with him, on the floor, with something glowing a sickly purple stabbed into his chest. Ugh. Taken down by a civilian. He'd never live that one down. Haruka was actually rather unsure of the details after that because he had apparently and rather embarrassingly passed out. The next thing he remembered was waking up in the Konoha hospital and being warned off of strong chakra usage until they could figure out what was actually wrong with him in the first place. Apparently purple glowing science weapons of evil weren't in the medical textbook. Darn. That unfortunate restriction had led to him getting rather stir-crazy, so the Hokage had sent him on a mission errand favor to investigate the village's newest arrival and, if possible, get him into the hands of the Konoha medical department. The target of this errand had been Potter Harry, an utterly heavenly cook and also, in terms of village intelligence, a complete unknown, which made him distinctly dangerous. Haruka had emerged from the encounter with a completely forgotten request, a full stomach, and undeniable fondness and sympathy for the village's most hated child. Oops. So now he had to do punishment duty for that. He privately suspected it was the Hokage's way of subjecting him to therapy. After all, what kind of shinobi punishment involved helping out at the academy? He figured it was probably rather unusual, even if the school secretary had given him an oddly knowing look and muttered something that sounded like Anbu. She probably said, "You too," or "woohoo," or something sarcastic. Whatever she said, she'd waved him away and told him to come back at the start of the new school term since there wasn't any need for him while all the students were on a week-long break. Iruka had been left with an annoying amount of spare time, so he'd decided to temporarily join the fish cake rotation. Also known as glorified Jinchuriki babysitting and occasionally called the Raymond Watch. But he liked the kid, even if he'd only met him while masquerading as a 12-year-old girl. He thought it would be relaxing, interesting, peaceful. The kid had threatened to get him castrated. He hoped to dear Kami Almighty that Naruto-kun didn't actually know what that meant. Where would he even learn a word like that? And would the Hokage actually do it? There was a chance Iruka would admit if he truly thought someone was educating Naruto-kun so young. Especially for him, seeing as the Hokage had confiscated his Icha and Iruka had promptly gone out and bought another edition of his favorite. It wasn't an addiction, really, not at all. He was a teenage boy. It was expected. Still, all he had to do was pretend he never heard any plans of any prank in any particular hidden village, ever. He hadn't thought it would be that bad. The worst that could happen would be itching powder or paint buckets in doorways or superglued chairs, right? Wrong. So very, very wrong. He was planning on standing far back and pretending he didn't know anything. Naruto-kun had somehow managed to submerge the entire academy in jello. Orange jello. There was no proof, of course. Nothing that linked the incident to Naruto-kun. But he would know the victorious gleam of a prankster's eyes anywhere, and Naruto's were positively sparkling with glee. Iruka admitted to himself that he would probably find the whole thing more amusing if he wasn't the academy's designated gopher and probably the one who would have to clean it up. As it was, he still found it impossible to stop the corners of his mouth from twitching upwards. The other academy staff members were poking at the gelatinous orange mass, appearing to debate over how, exactly, they would make it go away. One of them drew a sword and drew his arm back to strike at the jello spilling out of the front door. Iruka raised an eyebrow. How, exactly, was that supposed to help? A snicker from about waist level drew his gaze downwards. Naruto-kun was lounging comfortably in the grass, eyes fixed on the efforts of the teachers. Ooh, Haruka-san, you should definitely watch this. Looks like something interesting is going to happen. Iruka blinked at the child in confusion. Haruka-san. How did Naruto-kun link that name to him? He hoped that he didn't actually realize that he'd visited the apartment disguised as a 12-year-old girl. If the students of the school realized that that was his favorite disguise, it was incredibly practical, they'd never respect him. Naruto-kun glanced at him before looking back at the academy building. Harry-sensei pointed you out to me this morning when he walked me to school. He said to call you Haruka-san and that you wouldn't be mean to me and if I liked you I could invite you over for food again. What does he mean by again? Iruka thanked the kami for childish obliviousness and decided to sidestep the question. For some reason, he wasn't surprised that Potter-san had found him out. My name's Yumino Iruka, actually. I'm volunteering as an assistant teacher here. Oh, complained Naruto-kun. If your name was Haruka then you'd be the second Haruka that liked me and you could be name buddies with Haruka-san and Haruka could be my lucky name and it would be totally cool and amazing and you'd be like hi Haruka and she'd be like hi Haruka and Jinx you owe me a Raymond Haruka and duo, look. He didn't even need to take a breath after finishing his statement, instead pointing over the heads of those between them and the academy. Haruka looked. The teacher with the sword had evidently sliced at the jello, with no effect other than getting his weapon stuck mid-slice. Said weapon was now completely immersed in jello, the sharp blade having no effect on the mysterious substance other than jiggling it slightly. The man tugged at it, straining to pull it free from the orange mass and only succeeding in stretching the jello out like it was made of rubber. He glared, gave a final almighty yank and the jello yanked back. Snapping back like a demented elastic band, the sword and the teacher attached to it were pulled in, becoming completely engulfed in jelly. The teacher struggled for a moment before the blob, for all intents and purposes, spat him out, flailing ineffectually in the middle of a neon orange bubble. He bounced. Iruka laughed, unable to repress his amusement for the sake of dignity. Whatever else he had been expecting, it certainly hadn't been that. He glanced over at Naruto-kun. The child was observing the scene with a bright smile, full of childish mischief. How did you do that? He asked Naruto-kun, curious. Naruto-kun pasted a look of utter innocence on his face, but Iruka had already been fooled by that once. Me, Haruka-san. I didn't do anything. It's Haruka-sensei, he protested half-heartedly, with the sinking sensation that it was in vain. Are you sure? A vigorous, sincere nod was his reply, accompanied by convincingly twinkling big blue eyes. He smiled and turned back to watch the spectacle of the school. The teacher, after a few bounces, had gently exploded into a cloud of rainbow smoke, sparkles and noise to the general awe of the children and confused shock of the adults surrounding him. Some adventurous children had then jumped at the jello in curiosity. Soon, they were also bubble-eyed and from there it was simply a chain reaction. Like a swarm of ants, the children converged on the jello and the schoolyard was quickly filled with laughter, shouts and orange bubbles. The teachers tried to control the chaos, but they were simply overwhelmed. To make it worse, some civilian children were mixed into the crowd, which meant that none of the shinobi instructors could use ninjutsu on the mess of children. Using ninjutsu on civilian children was against the law. Before long, the teachers had gathered to one side to regroup, staring at the bouncing and occasionally exploding children in despair. It looked like the first day of school was going to have to be cancelled. Haruka sat down next to Naruto-kun to watch. "Haruka-san, shouldn't you go help them?" asked the child. "Probably," he admitted. "But someone put so much work into this. It would be rude of me to ruin their hard work, wouldn't it? Whoever did this must have been really skilled and stealthy and creative, which are all traits that a good shinobi should have. I respect them." He glanced at Naruto-kun out of the corner of his eye. The boy's face was tinted a brilliant pink. It seemed he didn't quite know how to deal with praise. "That help?" Naruto-kun mumbled quietly. Haruka asked, turning to look at him. "They had help, whoever set this up. So you shouldn't give all the credit to one person. It's too big to set up alone, and it's more fun to do things with other people anyways." Naruto gazed longingly at the laughing, playing children in front of them. Haruka nudged him on the shoulder, gently, pretending not to see the boy's slight flinch at the contact. "Why don't you go join in?" Naruto-kun shook his head. "They wouldn't want to play with me. Anyways, the Anbu will probably start looking for me soon." He made no move to get up, though, seeming reluctant to leave Haruka's company. Silence fell between them. Haruka rubbed at the back of his head, not quite sure how to proceed. Naruto reminded him of his younger self, lonely and looking for recognition. If that was the case, he probably didn't want to leave behind one of the few people actually willing to talk to him. As a fellow, former prankster, though, Haruka couldn't just let Naruto-kun get caught because of him. "Naruto-kun, what's your favorite food?" he asked. "Ramen." He cheered immediately, not even blinking at the non sequitur. "And Ichiraku's ramen is the best ramen in the village. Would you like to have lunch with me there, then?" "My treat," he offered. Naruto-kun looked at him blankly. "Me? You want to have lunch with me?" His disbelief made Haruka's heart hurt a little, but Haruka pushed it away. "Of course. And I'm paying. After all, we're celebrating." He stood up, brushing grass off his pants before offering a hand to the boy sitting next to him. "Celebrating what?" Naruto asked, still sounding distinctly distant. He grasped Haruka's hand and allowed himself to be pulled up. "Your complete non-involvement." Haruka winked at him with this absolutely amazing prank. "You'll have to tell me how you did. I mean, of course, how you think they did it." He gave a friendly smile. Naruto-kun smiled back, cautiously at first, but eventually escalating into pure happy laughter. "Sure, Haruka-san. But a ninja never reveals all his secrets, and I'm going to be the best ninja in the world. Now come on," he demanded, "Ichiraku's is this way." He tugged on Haruka's hand, which he was still holding after the teen had helped him up, dragging him towards the village streets. Neither of them made a move to let go. Meanwhile, back in Naruto's apartment building sat a very bored master of death. "I'm bored," Harry groaned. "Very good, sir," drawled one of his mirrors, sarcasm dripping from every word. Harry threw a pillow at it. Normally, Harry would go visit Minato and either bug him for lessons or simply annoy his brains out, but he'd already been over at his office more in the past week or so than the entire year before it combined. Apparently, thanks to him, his employees' paperwork was going through a massive backlog. Minato had gotten exasperated with his time wasting and enlisted Taishiru Taichu to help him keep Harry away. The Master of Death was officially banned from his own office at least until Minato got caught up on his work again. Harry was 65% certain that Minato had bribed the other Shinigami to help him with sweets, but he had no idea where the sweets would have come from, and he wasn't silly enough to accuse Taishiru Taichu of it to his face. The captain would just try and turn him into an ice cube and he'd end up with frostbite for weeks. Again. "There's nothing to do," Harry exclaimed, flopping back onto a couch and bouncing towards the ceiling. When he reached it, he decided to ignore gravity and pulled a ballpoint pen from behind his ear and started writing a checklist on it. Lesson plans for Naruto. Well, he was more of a figure it out as you go type. He crossed it off. Magic up various reality-defying artifacts for his apartment. Check. A work in progress, really, but he was bored of it for now. Help Naruto immerse the entire academy in orange jello. Done. He'd already gone to watch, too. The chaos was coming along quite well. Grocery shopping, even. No, he'd done that yesterday. Harry let out a long, slow sigh, sinking back to the floor. His mirror copied him, adding a mocking, the pain, the agony, to the end of it. He glared at the mirror. "I don't remember enchanting you to be this sassy," he grumbled. "You're getting old," it snuck back. "The memory's the first to go." "Well, you're a mirror." Harry paused for a moment, frowning. "I'm arguing with my own mirror." He waved his hand, and a curtain dropped in front of it, muffling the mirror's protests. I need to get out more, he told himself. If Naruto's going to school, I'll have nothing to do all day. I need a job. A quiet cracking noise sounded through the store. Before it faded, Inoichi was standing at the source of the noise, kunai in hand, facing the figure that appeared there with a defensive stance. The figure smiled, held up a hand in a disarming gesture, and used his other hand on his knees to support him as he caught his breath. It was Harry-san. Good morning, Yamanaka-san, he greeted once his breathing evened out. Good morning, Harry-san. Inoichi flipped the kunai back into the holster that it came from. I didn't know that you could do that, I almost attacked you. He tucked the ability away for further consideration. As far as he knew, there was only one technique for instantaneous transportation. Well, I usually walk, Harry-san explained. But then I ran into these medics and he leaned forward and continued in a stage whisper. They're after me. Inoichi raised an eyebrow. They're medics, Harry-san. They're good guys. Here in Konoha, they're even good guys who know what they're doing, which is more than what you can say for some of the other villages. Harry-san shook his head vehemently. I hate hospitals. They kept insisting I come in for a checkup when I'm clearly perfectly healthy and they surrounded me. Like wolves or rabid squirrels. Oh, no, repeated Inoichi, his face the image of seriousness. Rabid squirrels. How did you ever escape? I apparated, of course, Harry said. Apparated? Repeated Inoichi, looking at Harry-san questioningly. In response, Harry-san twirled on the spot and disappeared with a crack, appearing instantly in the far corner of the shop. With another twirl and crack, he reappeared back where he started. Magician's secret, he elaborated with a wink, which wasn't exactly helpful at all. Inoichi shook his head with amusement. Can this humble shopkeeper help you with anything, or did Magician-san just come here to drop hints and escape from hospital workers? He walked back over to the shop counter. Harry-san followed him, wagging a finger. Don't try to humble shopkeeper me. The shopkeeper at the calligraphy place mentioned that you were clan head, Yamanaka-sama. Inoichi sat down with a shrug. Does it really have to change anything? The Yamanakas are not a very formal clan, we don't insist on as much deference as some of the more traditional ones. Harry-san smiled cheekily. So I can keep calling you Yamanaka-san. How about Inoichi-san? Or just Inoichi? Or even Inoichi-kun? Ino-kun? Ino is my daughter's name, Inoichi pointed out. So? Asked the other man. Then, with the revealing some extraordinary secret, he whispered, you can be Ino-kun and she'll be Ino-chan. Inoichi just looked at him, deadpan, disbelief emanating faintly from his expression. Well, it was true that he didn't put very much stock in formalities, the only people who still treated him so casually, without being blatantly rude about it, were the shinobi he'd grown up friends with. Even then, some of his yearmates had started calling him Yamanaka-sama, first when he became his clan head, then more when he was promoted to the head of torture and interrogation. He supposed he should have seen this coming, though Harry-san hadn't even properly respected the Hokage himself. Harry-san waving a hand slowly across his face was what brought him out of his thoughts. Hello? Are you still there? Inoichi batted the hand away gently. Just stick with Inoichi-san, please. I think the two Inos would get a bit confusing. Harry pouted for half a second before agreeing. If you say so, Inoichi-san. Anyways, I was wondering, do you know if there are any shops around here that are hiring? I need a job or I'll be bored to tears and weird stuff always seems to happen when I'm bored. There was this time with a giant chicken and a potato wedge and nah, I'll tell you about that later. Inoichi mentally cringed at the image of Harry-san, bored. Can you tell me what kind of skills you have? He asked. Job experience. Recommendations. Harry-san leaned on the countertop, thinking. Well, I can pretty much do everything and I've had a lot of jobs before. But I don't really have any recommendations because all those jobs were really far away and anyways, I kept getting fired for not making sense. I'm not sure what they meant by that, really. My work was always top quality, customers loved me. That's an interesting resume, commented Inoichi slowly. Meanwhile, his mind was working rapidly. He actually knew of several job openings in the area, but they were all civilian-owned businesses and he was pretty sure that none of them would be able to handle the magician without going at least half insane. That left shinobi and clan businesses, but most of them only hired people with proper recommendations and shinobi experience, neither of which Harry-san had. Which really only left him one option if he didn't want to leave Harry-san bored and free to cause chaos. For some reason, that idea conjured up horrifying images of a village overrun with sparkles, bouncy balls, and rabid squirrels. Tell me, Harry-san, how much do you know about flowers? Iruka sighed longingly at the display, incredibly conscious of how light his wallet was in his pocket. When he said he'd treat Naruto-kun to ramen, he hadn't been too worried about the cost. Ramen was pretty cheap and Naruto-kun couldn't possibly eat that much anyways, tiny little thing that he was. Apparently, he'd been very wrong. The child had eaten about 20 bowls before the owner of the stand had taken pity on him and cut Naruto-kun off. It had still taken all of the cash he had on him to pay the bill. Haruka-san, what's that? Naruto-kun pointed to the other side of the market square. They'd been wandering aimlessly around, Haruka doing his best to ignore the cold glares directed towards his companion. To distract himself, he'd been telling Naruto-kun child's safe, over-exaggerated versions of some of his missions, which inevitably boiled down to something along the lines of a heroic shinobi rescuing a damsel in distress by defeating a dastardly villain. As a result, he hadn't been paying much attention to his surroundings. In the direction where Naruto-kun was looking, a large crowd had gathered, surrounding something or someone. Every so often, the crowd would cheer loudly, the applause inevitably attracting more onlookers. By now, people were standing on chairs in order to look over the crowd. Haruka doubted they'd be able to see a thing if they joined them. I don't know, he said. Let's go find out. He swung Naruto-kun onto his shoulders, getting a shriek of surprised delight for it. Choosing a nearby restaurant, he ran up the side, making sure Naruto-kun was holding on tightly. Judging by the child's giggles, he was enjoying himself. When they reached the rooftop, they looked down, easily able to see what people were crowding around. Naruto-kun gasped. It's Harry-sensei. Haruka blinked. So it was. From this distance, he could almost mistake the man for an Uchiha if it wasn't for the fact that an Uchiha wouldn't be caught dead putting on a magic show for civilians. Potter-san, dressed in a long black coat and bright white gloves, was clearly enjoying himself, laughing freely as he joked with the children sitting around him and had them pull colorful balls from his seemingly empty hat. Haruka looked closer. He was certain that most of them were supposed to be in school, if not for the jello. Come to think of it, Naruto-kun had mentioned an accomplice, and Potter-san definitely fit the bill. Down in the square, the crowd gave a collective ah as Potter-san tossed 7 of the balls into the air and began to juggle them. After several seconds they changed into pastries, then teacups, then appeared to light on fire, though Potter-san was completely unharmed. A few more moments and they turned into birds and flew away into the sky. Potter-san was left with a single bird perched on each hand, which turned into paper cranes when Haruka wasn't paying attention and which he bent down to give to a pair of children by his feet. He said something inaudible to them and they blushed, making Harry and his audience laugh. Haruka smiled at the display. It wasn't anything that couldn't be done with simple genjutsu, but the shinobi world in general frowned on using their techniques for things they deemed as frivolous, and entertaining civilians definitely fell into that category. It was obvious that Harry-san disagreed with them if he was willing to use chakra too. Wait a moment. Haruka paused that train of thought. Now that he thought of it, he couldn't sense a single scrap of chakra from Potter-san. The only chakra down in the marketplace came from some onlookers scattered around the outer edges. Naruto, do you know how? Haruka looked at Naruto-kun, who was still sitting on his shoulders. The boy was smiling, but it was small and oddly forced as he stared down at Potter-san. Naruto-kun, what's wrong? Nothing, he said, his smile widening into a convincing grin. Did you see that? Isn't Harry-sensei cool? Haruka shook his shoulders gently, jostling Naruto-kun. You don't have to smile if you don't mean it. What's wrong? When the child answered him, his voice was quiet. They like him. So they're going to try to keep him away from me now. Come on, now, Haruka said. Does Potter-san seem like the kind of person who would let them do that? Naruto-kun shook his head slowly. But Harry-san likes them too. What if he decides that he likes them more than he likes me? Haruka opened his mouth to protest, but before he could say anything, the depressingly serious atmosphere was ruined by the very man they were talking about. Potter-san appeared on the roof with a cracking noise and a twirl, with a few green sparkles floating down around him. Haruka glanced down at the square. Sure enough, hundreds of sparkles were taking up the space where Potter-san had been moments before. Naruto-kun, my amazing student, come here and give me a hug, Potter-san said, arms open. Naruto-kun scrambled off Haruka's shoulders, kicking his head a bit in the process and tugging on his ponytail for balance, and hugged him. Looks like everything went off without a hitch, nah. Potter-san continued, ruffling Naruto-kun's hair. But we can't do this too often because then none of the other kids would ever have to go to school and we aren't that nice, right? To Haruka, he said, for the record, I have no idea about anything that could have possibly happened involving school, the color orange, or exploding bubbles. But the academy should be back to normal by either midnight tonight or as soon as all the jello is eaten with spoons. Whichever comes first. Naruto-kun snickered, leaning slightly into Potter-san's hand. Okay, agreed Haruka, unsure what the proper response to that should be. Potter-san turned back to Naruto-kun. Now, the Anbu are probably going to catch up to you soon and there's someone else after me that I need to talk to. He's down there at the moment. Potter-san waved a hand at the dispelling crowd on the streets. If you're back before I am and you get hungry, you can go into my apartment. You remember the secret password? Naruto-kun nodded. There's food in the fridge that you can heat up. I left instructions with a mirror over the fireplace for the dumplings, and you can help yourself. Lesson plans for tonight are in scrolls, and the instructions are, again, with a mirror. And you need to eat your vegetables. The stuff in the ramen I know you had for lunch doesn't count. Haruka-chan. Haruka twitched. It's you mean Haruka, actually. Otter-san flicked him on the forehead with a gloved finger, which Haruka could have sworn was glowing slightly. Sure it is. You're allowed into my apartment for today. Go with him if you can, make sure he doesn't burn anything not clearly meant to be burned, and do you know anything about Fuinjutsu? Haruka shook his head, feeling faintly dazed. There was no reason to listen to Potter-san, but there wasn't any reason not to listen to him either. Well, you can check over his calligraphy. It doesn't have to be perfect, just legible. Also, there's some ice cream in the freezer, but be careful, because Naruto-kun on a sugar high is an amazing, dangerous thing. He paused for a moment to take a breath. Ah, it looks like he's caught up with me. I'll see you later. Haruka looked in the direction of Potter-san's gaze. The top of someone's head could be seen over the side of the roof. Potter-san laughed, jumped into the air, and grabbed his pursuer and shoving his head down as he fell towards the street. A yelp, and both of them were out of sight, save for the trailing ends of a red coat and a black one. He looked at Naruto-kun, who appeared as dazed as he felt. It's obvious that your sensei cares about you, he remarked. So I think you can stop this silliness. Naruto-kun nodded, smiling, one hand coming up to touch his extraordinarily ruffled hair. It was almost as messy as Potter-san's now. There was a mischievous gleam in his eyes, the same one that had been there at the academy that morning. Haruka-san, Harry-sensei said the Anbu would probably catch up with us soon. Doesn't that sound like a challenge to you? Haruka laughed, bending down so Naruto-kun could climb back onto his back. Challenge accepted. The place that Jiraiya chose for their conversation was an empty training ground, a large expanse of bare dirt that faded into grass and trees on the edges. Off to the side, a set of training posts was set up in the vague suggestion of a semicircle. There wasn't a sound to be heard other than the occasional rustle of wine through leaves, and nobody within earshot other than the Anbu that Harry was politely pretending not to notice. The passing breeze made their clothes flap dramatically. It was all quite pleasantly cliché. I suppose you're Jiraiya-san, said Harry, eyebrow raised in the very picture of disinterest. The Toad Sage of the Sannin. I see you've heard of me, he replied, head high. Centuries of experience reading body language and liberal use of empathy told Harry that the man was being protective. Of what, he wasn't absolutely sure, but he could probably make a fairly good guess. Of course I have. Mikun told me about you. So did Inoichi-san. Even the Hokage mentioned you. The only person who doesn't seem to know who you are is Naruto-kun. He frowned at Jiraiya. Which is strange, seeing as you're his godfather. How do you know that? Asked Jiraiya. I can count the people who are supposed to know that on one hand, and you are definitely not one of them. Mikun told me, weren't you listening? He answered with an exasperated eye roll. You're one of the reasons he told me that Naruto-kun would be well looked after. He's probably looking at you from the afterlife with that awful kicked puppy expression. Jiraiya twitched slightly. Clearly, he knew what expression Harry was talking about. How did you know Minato well enough for him to tell you that? Harry sighed. Are we really going to go through this again? I'm sure you've talked to Sarutobi-san. The truth doesn't change, no matter how many times you ask the same questions. And anyways, we're getting distracted. He crossed his arms. My godfather was held prisoner on an island guarded by soul-sucking wraiths. What's your excuse? Jiraiya took a moment to wonder whether Harry was being metaphorical. Harry drummed his fingers on his arms, impatient. The sage snorted. Like I have an obligation to tell you anything. You can't bluff your way into a hidden village's secrets, boy. Boy? Repeated Harry, amused. And I'm bluffing, am I? Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. I was fighting in wars before you were born, boy. You can't scare me into doing anything. So Harry said slowly, are you saying that I scared the Hokage into helping me? I'm flattered you think so highly of me, he batted his eyes, but do you really think that little of your leader? That comment got him a dirty glare, Jiraiya's murderous intent briefly flaring to life before he reined it in under control. To the side, Harry could sense the Anbu becoming tense, readying themselves for action. I have nothing but respect for my Hokage, he growled. And you'd better not insinuate anything, otherwise he is a great shinobi and a better Kage. I have never and will never betray him. There was a strange emphasis on the word I, as if betrayal was a personal issue to him. Harry mentally marked the topic off limits until further consideration. He helped you because he believes you are worth helping, because he always believes the best of people. Me, on the other hand, I'm not quite so optimistic. It's not just optimism. I've sworn a binding oath I couldn't hurt Naruto-kun even if I wanted to, explained Harry calmly. People like me can't break promises like that. Right. Jiraiya's voice was laden with disbelief. And you expect me to trust in your so-called magic. What is it that you use? Kekkei Genkai? Fuinjutsu? Actually, I use magic. He tried to keep as straight a face as possible, but Harry was positive that his mouth was twitching. He was also pretty sure that Jiraiya could see it. Don't play games with me, boy. Jiraiya was angry and getting angrier. Part of Harry's mind was whispering that offending Naruto's godfather was a decision that he'd regret later, but the rest was curious as to how far Jiraiya could be baited. Again with the whole boy thing, I'm older than I look, you know. I was fighting in wars before your grandfather was born. Liar, Jiraiya instantly accused. I try not to lie, actually, Harry mused in a thoughtful voice. It just makes things too easy. It's impossible. You can't be any older than 30 at most. Jiraiya looked critically at him, as if trying to discover signs of the age that Harry claimed. Aw, thank you, simpered Harry, feigning a blush and batting his eyes again. Jiraiya winced. There are more things on heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy, Harry sing-songed. Magic exists. The proof is right here in front of you. You've done nothing but stand there and lie, Jiraiya retorted. I know you were watching me perform for the civilians, Harry pointed out. I was celebrating getting a job. You should congratulate me. Jiraiya made a face of disbelief at his audacity, then shook his head. I saw nothing that couldn't be done with the very simplest of genjutsu. It seemed Jiraiya wouldn't be convinced without anything more substantial. Alright, then. Watch. Elemental spells, while flashy, wouldn't quite do the trick here. Shinobi relied on similar techniques extensively, and Jiraiya would just chalk it up to some jutsu he hadn't seen before. No, Harry had one specific trick in mind, one that had taken him many years of practice. He closed his eyes and visualized his animagus form before focusing all of his attention on its wings. The feeling of flight, the wind flowing through his feathers, he held simultaneously onto that image and one of his human form. He tensed his torso, bracing himself only for a moment before he felt a strange familiar feeling of wings bursting from his back. As an afterthought, he twitched a finger to rip two perfect holes in the back of his coat, leaving them free to flex beneath the sun. He knew from experience that he looked like some sort of angel, with feathers the exact same shade of black as his hair. He raised an eyebrow at Jiraiya, silently asking if he'd seen enough. Tricks and illusions, the other man scoffed. With a few powerful wing beats that made the dust rise around him in a small cloud, Harry rose into the air. He looped gracefully, stopping when he faced Jiraiya once more. Still think it's an illusion? Jiraiya seemed strangely speechless. Still, Harry sensed skepticism. Do you want to fight me? He asked with a smirk, hovering around a foot off the ground. Then you can test for yourself how real my magic is. I've been itching to beat up the man who abandoned my student. The challenge seemed to snap Jiraiya out of his daze. Konoha Rule number 5: Shinobi cannot attack civilians. He sounded regretful. It seemed that Jiraiya was itching to beat him up too. Wandlessly, Harry cast a Levicorpus. Jiraiya was jerked into the air by one ankle, flailing with surprise. One of his Jetta sandals fell off and landed on the ground with a dull thump. There. Now it's self-defense. Put me down, Jiraiya snarled. I'll even make it easier for you, Harry continued. No invisible spells. Sound fair? Jiraiya glared at him. He'd regained his balance, though still upside down, and was looking at Harry with his arms crossed. When Harry released the spell, he flipped himself to land on his feet, even managing to slip his bare foot back in his sandal in the process. You do know who you're fighting, don't you? And you still choose to handicap yourself. Harry rolled his eyes at the posturing. The question is, do you know who you're fighting? Do try to keep up, it's been a very long time since a shinobi has given me a decent amount of fun. He landed back on the ground and tucked his wings away, reversing the transformation. As part of his body, they would kill Jiraiya if they touched him. Much as he disapproved of the man so far, he didn't want him dead. He also extended his arms, conjuring a sword in one hand and a plain stick in the other. He wouldn't need an amplifier to duel a mortal, but Harry considered it tradition to use some sort of wand. He transfigured the stick into holly, for old time's sake, and settled himself into a basic dueling stance. A heartbeat later and he was moving, dodging a barrage of kunai and shuriken. He narrowed his eyes. Jiraiya was barely trying. The throws had hardly any force behind them. He tucked his fake wand into a pocket and reached out, using a lifetime of Quidditch reflexes to catch the last kunai midair. You're not even trying, he complained, and tried to throw the kunai back. The weapon felt unfamiliar in his hand, and it missed Jiraiya by at least a meter. The man looked at him doubtfully, one eyebrow raised. I don't think I have to, he replied. Harry pouted. I said I was a wizard, not a ninja. Drawing his fake wand once more, he waved it in a familiar swish and flick. Around him, the weapons that he'd just dodged rose into the air. Harry focused, and they spun gently in the air until they were all pointed directly at Jiraiya. With a push of his mind, they hurtled towards him, over twice as fast as Jiraiya's throws. The man dodged them, of course, but the speculation in his eyes made it clear that he was starting to question what, exactly, Harry could do. Jireya's hands blurred into a series of hand seals, and he muttered something that Harry couldn't quite hear. The effects were obvious, though, because a wave of earth rushed towards him, growing in size and speed as it advanced. Waving his stick, Harry cast a shield bubble, and the dirt parted harmlessly to either side. He glanced towards the end of the field to see what Jireya was up to next. Probing attacks were annoying, but a good strategy when dealing with an unknown. To his surprise, Jireya wasn't there. Harry cursed himself for not paying attention and cast his senses outward. He could sense his opponent's soul somewhere in front of him and approaching rapidly, but it felt like the sage was underground. He whirled around and jumped back, raising his sword just in time to block a kunai strike. "Better?" Jireya asked. He didn't give Harry any time to respond, instead falling into the patterns of a kata. Harry blocked as well as he could. He was faster than the other man, just barely, but Jireya was definitely stronger. The longer they exchanged blows, the clumsier Harry felt. He was trained in close combat, and his body was much stronger and faster than it was when he first stopped aging. A wizard's magical strength grew with time, and with as much time as Harry had, his core had started strengthening his physical body. But he was by no means well trained enough to be a match for Jireya in a straight close-range exchange. From the corner of his eye he saw something forming in the man's free hand and decided that enough was enough. He threw up a sloppy shield bubble, which shattered with Jireya's second strike to it. That was okay, though by then he'd focused on a spot half the training yard away and apparated to it. He reappeared facing his original spot just in time to see Jireya drill a swirling blue sphere into the ground, leaving a perfectly round hole and billows of dust. "You're getting there," Harry told him. He sent a stream of fire towards Jireya, trying to surround him. It was the same spell that Dumbledore had used in the cave of Inferi so many years ago. The sage spat back bullets of what looked like oil before dodging away. When they passed through the fire, they became fireballs, which Harry blocked by levitating chunks of packed training ground into their paths. Before they'd dropped to the ground, Harry went on the offensive, casting a spell chain that he'd developed sparring with some of his co-workers. For people better at dodging than the average human, he favored area spells, slow-moving mists, and conjured explosives. He started with a noxious-looking purple mist, a simple poison that worked through skin contact. While that worked its way across the field, his wand flowed into the motions for a blinding curse, stringing hex, bat bogey, and even a tickling charm. The thing about spell chains, especially this one, was that the wand movements and casting speeds mattered more than the spells themselves. The idea was to keep them under enough of a barrage that something hit. There wasn't any single particularly nasty spell this chain was for sparring, after all, but all of them were irritating or impairing in some way. He brought his focus back to the spells he was casting. He'd done this particular combination so many times that he was on autopilot, feeling oddly separated from himself as he conjured a boulder near Jireya and cast a Bombarda Maxima on it. The boulder exploded into shrapnel, which Jireya avoided neatly by substituting himself with a log. The Sandon took advantage of the moment Harry took to find him again and sent a row of spikes sprouting out of the ground towards him. Harry was forced to break off his spell chain and leap away to dodge it. "Serpensortia," Harry hissed in Parselting when he landed. The use of Parselting, coupled with the fact that he was really using wandless magic, conjured a magic circle in the air in front of him, which pulsed a deep poisonous green. Snakes erupted from it, some as thin as his fingers, others as thick as his neck. "Restrain him," he instructed them quietly, barely noticing the sibilant hiss that everyone else on the field would hear. "You can play with him, but nothing permanent." The chorus of hissed acknowledgements was his response. Across the field, Harry could sense Jireya's confusion. He looked up. The man was staring at him with a strange expression. When the snake started heading towards him, though, he bit his finger hard enough to draw blood and snapped his hands into a few seals before slamming it into the ground. 3 toads, brilliantly colored creatures as tall as Jireya's chest, popped into existence with a collective puff of smoke. They noticed the snakes immediately and drew weapons to attack them. 3 toads seemed to Harry a bit overkill for the few snakes that he'd conjured, so he created another circle, maintaining a constant stream of conjured snakes. While keeping up the 2 spells simultaneously would probably exhaust a mortal wizard within seconds, Harry barely felt the draw on his magic. "You can summon snakes?" asked Jireya, between sending a flurry of small fireballs. The man had to pitch his voice to be heard over the creature's babble. "Wizard," Harry called back, sounding annoyed. "I can summon anything I want to. Seriously, magic isn't that complicated a concept." He anchored a magical shield to his sword to deflect the attack, but was caught unaware when the flames died away to reveal shuriken at their centers. 2 of them ricocheted towards him. He dodged one, but the other scored a cut across his face. He glanced at the ground, where his blood had marked dark splatters in the earth. It was steaming slightly, and the spots were crumbling into nothingness as his blood evaporated. It seemed that this particular dimension didn't like Shinigami blood. Oops, he muttered to himself. Time to end this. Yanking up his left sleeve, he traced the runes tattooed there Uriz and Burkano for creation and birth, Thurisaz for form and power. When he'd inked the design onto his skin, he'd hoped to create a spell base for golem creating, something he could reuse to summon everything from stone wolves to ice giants. What he'd actually gotten was a complete spell, which summoned the exact same golem each time from whatever materials were available. The first time she'd clapped eyes on it, Luna had named it Fido. Fido, distract him, he commanded, and a great lump of earth rose started to rise out of the ground, heading towards Jiraiya. By the time it was halfway there, it started to take shape, excess dirt crumbling away to reveal a head, then another head, then another. The sage took a moment to stare, leaving his summons to fight of the remainder of the snakes, as a giant three-headed dog bounded towards him. Then he took a half step back to steady himself and started on a jutsu. Satisfied that his opponent was occupied, Harry started on a binding spell, one that traded a short casting time for a wider area. Once cast, it would render the legs of everyone in range, except for the caster immobile. With as much time and power as Harry was putting into it, it would reach as far as the Anbu perching curiously in the trees. The back of his mind noticed that there were more of them than there was when the fight had started. Harry suspected that one of the Anbu had spread the word and the others had come to watch. 5 seconds of murmuring and stick waving later, the ground glowed a pretty pale pink. Across the clearing, Jiraiya jerked awkwardly as his legs froze up, refusing to move. So did the toads. The only ones unaffected were Harry's conjured snakes, which didn't have legs and which swarmed over Jiraiya's summons until they were completely buried from sight. When the piles deflated with pops and puffs of smoke, Harry knew that the toads had de-summoned themselves and waved his wand with a whisper of Viperi Vanesca. With that, the snakes faded from existence, soon leaving Harry and Jiraiya the only ones in sight, the sage twisting his torso in an attempt to move his legs. "Right," declared Harry, walking slowly towards his opponent. "I think we can both agree now that magic exists, so that's enough for now. If we go on for any longer, I'm afraid that we might start to affect the Anbu in the trees over there." Jiraiya shook his head stubbornly. "This isn't over until I say it is. I'm not admitting defeat to some snot-nosed kid like you, magic or not." As he spoke, he smeared blood over his fingertips and started making hand seals. Harry tossed a Petrificus Totalis at him to immobilize him completely, but Jiraiya dodged it by bending his upper body backwards, supporting his weight by landing on his hands in a bridge. As his palms touched the ground, sealing scripts radiated outwards from them, and his torso was engulfed in the now familiar haze of chakra smoke. Harry had to wince. People who looked that old weren't supposed to bend like that. Still, he couldn't have Jiraiya making any more trouble, so he cast an Immobilis on him, making sure to aim for his legs this time, so that the man couldn't dodge. When the smoke cleared, it revealed 2 tiny toads, and Jiraiya twisted into a pose that looked like a cross between contortionism and yoga. "Ma?" asked Jiraiya, sounding confused. "Pa? What are you doing here?" Harry walked around to Jiraiya's other side to take a better look at who he'd summoned. The 2 toads were tiny compared to his other summons, smaller than Harry's head and rather wizened looking. One was olive green, wearing a grey cloak, and had fluffy tufts of white hair forming his eyebrows, hair, and goatee. Harry assumed that that was Pa. The other toad was a lighter green and wore a black cloak, a purple poof of hair, and matching purple lipstick. That one was probably Ma. "What? That's all you have to say? No, nice to see you, Ma, or it's been a long time, Ma, or sorry for not stopping by more often, Ma," the purple-haired toad scolded. "If I didn't know better, I'd say that you weren't happy to see us." Jiraiya laughed nervously, and Harry marveled at the change from fierce adult to contrite child. "It's wonderful to see you two as always, but I'm in the middle of a fight and I was meaning to summon someone else. I didn't see the need to bother you with something this trivial." "Oh, stop kidding yourself." It was the other toad that answered this time, the one Jiraiya called Pa. "You're not in the middle of anything. You've been quite soundly defeated at this point and there's no need to lie to yourself any further." Jiraiya closed his eyes and gave a small sigh. "Aren't you supposed to be on my side?" I either ignored him or didn't hear him. "Your fight was over the moment you got caught by that pink spell that Gamakaru was telling us about. There's nothing here that can really counter magic except for maybe Senjutsu, and you weren't going to summon us anyways. Ma and I just came to take a look at this wizard you're fighting." Jiraiya blinked. "You knew about magic. Why didn't you ever tell me about it?" "Of course we knew about magic," Ma said. "We're the 2 great sage toads. But there was no point in telling you because magic doesn't exist in the elemental nations. Which means that we have a visitor. Where is this fellow?" Smirking with amusement, Harry cleared his throat loudly. The 2 toads whirled around and stared at him. Harry gave a cheerful wave. Curiously, they hopped closer. "Well, fry me a flobberworm frittata," declared Ma, peering at him closely. Pa nodded. If it isn't Harry Potter himself. Do I know you? Harry asked, unsure. Neither he nor Jiraiya had mentioned his name. More intriguing still was the way the toad said his name, without a hint of an accent. He'd sounded downright British. I wouldn't be surprised if you don't remember us, Ma explained. But we ran into you a long time ago, and we've heard a lot about you since. Will you come with us? I know someone who would love to see you again. Thanks for waiting for me, Haruka-san, Naruto-kun said shyly. They were at the Hokage Tower, and he'd just been escorted out of Hokage Jiji's office after what felt like an hour-long visit. You're welcome, Naruto-kun, Haruka smiled down at him. It's the least I could do, it's thanks to me that we got caught. Naruto-kun shook his head. They might have seen you first, but I'm the one who picked the hiding spot. Haruka raised an eyebrow. Well, I'm the one who left a trail for them to follow. That's cause you were carrying me. Naruto-kun stuck his tongue out. The whole argument was making Haruka feel incredibly childish. He asked. The child insisted. Like this. Quick as a wink, Haruka scooped down and hoisted Naruto-kun back onto his shoulders. He started walking calmly out of the tower, ignoring Naruto-kun's reaction. Hey, not fair, Naruto-kun complained, poking gently at his head. You're taller than me. You're just a pipsqueak, Haruka told him. Naruto-kun blew a raspberry. He retaliated by hopping like a rabbit, stopping only when his passenger started to complain of dizziness. So, how was your visit? He asked when he started walking normally again. Hokage Jiji wanted to know about the jello, Naruto-kun told him. And after he promised that I wouldn't get in trouble for it, I told him about how it'll be gone by tomorrow and the ceiling tags will disappear and how Harry-sensei taught me how. Then Jiji wanted to know about Harry-sensei, so I told him all about what we've been up to and how he's an awesome teacher and that he thinks vegetables make people grow up taller. Are you tall because you ate vegetables? Maybe, Haruka said slowly. But I'm also tall because I'm older than you and because of how tall my parents were. He instantly regretted mentioning his parents although they were both orphans. Naruto-kun had never known his and he wasn't sure how he would react. Naruto-kun, however, just nodded. That makes sense. I'll have to ask Harry-sensei how tall my parents were. He knew them? Haruka asked, surprised. I didn't know that anyone knew about your parents. You're lucky a lot of the orphans from 6 years ago don't know anything about theirs. I guess, Naruto-kun said. After a moment he volunteered, Harry-sensei says that their names are a secret but he tells me stories about them. Stories? Prompted Haruka. Naruto nodded again and elaborated. Like how dad asked mom to marry him but mom was bugging him to do it for almost a whole month before that. And it took him so long because he wanted to find the perfect test ring ever but nothing looked right but then mom did this mission for a famous ring maker and he gave a ring to her as a bonus. And so mom gave that ring to dad, saying it was a birthday present even if it wasn't his birthday, and dad just got really embarrassed for waiting so long and he was so in love with her that he asked her at that moment with a ring from a festival game. Harry-sensei says that he got her a proper ring later, but mom always kept the toy one because she said it was her real engagement ring. And then. Naruto continued retelling the tales of his parents that his teacher had told him. He seemed happy to share them with someone. Haruka had told him earlier that he was an orphan too and he knew that Naruto got from him the feeling of someone who understood. After a while, Haruka started sharing stories of his childhood as well and they whiled away their journey with happy reminiscence. By mutual silent agreement, they took the long way back to Naruto-kun's and Harry-san's apartment building, Naruto-kun pointing out directions every so often when Haruka hesitated. He'd noticed the looks that the younger boy attracted when they were in town and going through the training grounds was much more peaceful, even if it came at the price of dodging a stray kunai every so often. Haruka was an Anbu operative, no matter what the medics insisted. He could handle it. A perfectly normal day in the life of a Konoha shinobi. Except. Naruto-kun, do you see that? He pointed at a patch of trees through which a pale pink glow was showing. It kind of looked like a sunset, except it was somehow off. Said Naruto-kun thoughtfully, breaking off his latest story. It kind of looks like Harry-sensei's work. Can we get closer? Haruka walked over slowly. It seemed that he wasn't the only person who'd noticed the phenomenon. Around the edges of the wide pink circle were a few others, appearing frozen mid-step. They gave off the odd impression of flies stuck on flypaper. In the middle of the circle was an old man who appeared frozen in the middle of an awkward backflip. Haruka squinted, wandering closer. That kind of looked like Jiraiya, actually. Suddenly, he jerked forward, almost losing his balance. Glancing down, he realized that he'd stepped on the circle in his distraction and his legs were refusing to obey him. He sighed. Sometimes, he wondered if the universe hated him. Haruka-san, are you stuck? Naruto-kun tugged on his ponytail. You look like you're stuck. It took Haruka a moment to identify the scrabbling motions on his shoulders, but once he did, he realized that Naruto-kun was trying to get down. Actually, I don't think that's a good idea, you might. Naruto-kun landed lightly on his feet. Might what? Ooh oh, never mind, he said, bending over to tug at his foot with his hands. Give me a second to fix this. The child fished around in his pockets before pulling out a small, ornate hand mirror. Haruka was dubious, but stayed silent. If Naruto-kun thought he could fix it, it would do no harm to let him try. Eri-sensei, Naruto-kun said to it. Hey Eri-sensei. He waited for a few seconds, staring at it, until the mirror responded, yes, Naruto-kun. Haruka whipped his head back to stare at the mirror, practically giving himself whiplash. In its reflective surface, he didn't see the sky, or the surroundings, or even Naruto-kun. Instead he could see Potter-san's smiling face, looking at Naruto-kun through the mirror as if it was an everyday occurrence. In that moment, Haruka silently promised himself to stop trying to make sense of Potter Harry. Did you leave a trap behind on the training ground? Pink, kind of glowy, makes people stuck. Asked Naruto-kun, sounding surprisingly admonishing for a 6-year-old. Oops, Potter-san replied, looking sheepish. Outside of the frame he seemed to do something, then asked, better? Better? Naruto-kun said. Haruka looked up. Sure enough, the glow was fading, and the people who were stuck before were slowly taking steps, looking like they had to readjust to moving again. Haruka supposed he was lucky, freezing mid-step, as it was a relatively steady position. The man in the middle of the field had collapsed when the spell was released, and was only now slowly getting to his feet, rubbing at his mid-lower back. He turned back to Naruto-kun. Apparently the child had said his goodbyes, and tucked the mirror away. The boy held his hand up for Haruka's. When the teen took it, Naruto-kun started to lead him away, tugging him towards his apartment as if nothing had happened. Now, as I was saying, Dad was getting tired of paintballs, so. Harry looked around in awe. He was standing in a valley beneath a giant mountain, and wherever he looked, he saw the lush green of growing things. The plant life seemed to consist of giant plants. He couldn't see trees, but rather leafy plants that were just as tall. He thought he recognized some great big taro plants and coral bells that shaded the valley from direct sunlight. He could see strangely shaped logs with windows and doors, which he assumed the toads lived in, and pools and fountains between them, flowing with gentle murmurs. Distantly, he could also hear the thunder of a giant waterfall. The ground was covered with soft moss, which his feet sank into with every careful step. It's beautiful, he whispered, the words escaping without any conscious thought. Thank you, piped up a voice from near his feet. Ma and Pa were crouched there, looking at him expectantly. I hope you weren't waiting for long, Harry said. It took me a moment to sort out coordinate apparition for this world. I've never done it here before, and I wanted to make sure I didn't accidentally end up underwater or something. Ma waved a hand at him. It's fine, it's fine. I'm just glad you could make it. Now, come this way. She hopped onto a path made of stepping stones, embedded into the moss. Her husband and Harry followed her, the former hopping backwards so he could talk to Harry. I'm sure that you have a lot of questions, said Pa, and while who we're going to see will be able to answer more of them, I probably know a few of the more basic ones. Harry thought for a moment, debating what to start with. Where have you seen me before? He asked. I've seen many things over the years, but I'm not sure if I've ever run into talking toads before. The last time we met, we couldn't talk, explained Pa. It was in the Longbottom mansion. Ma was named Tori, and I was named Tuck, and we were the toads in charge of pest control in one of the greenhouses. Neville introduced us for all of a moment. Now, she's Shima and I'm Fukasaku, but we've never forgotten you. Meeting a person like you is rather unforgettable. Harry froze. You're from home? Hogwarts. There were many versions of Earth that he'd visited, but only one of them had a Neville Longbottom in it with a fondness for toads, and only one of them had a Hogwarts. Hence, he'd always referred to his home dimension by the name of his school. Fukasaku seemed to understand. Yes. It looks like time isn't consistent, either it's been many years for us, but you look exactly the same. Harry declined to mention that how old he looked had nothing to do with how long he lived. Walking forward once more, he asked his next question. But how is that possible? The toad shrugged, which looked a bit strange to Harry, as he wasn't aware that they could move their shoulders that way. We toads have always believed that it is reincarnation. Ma and I aren't the only ones from that world, although we and one other are the only toads who have met you. As far as we can tell, we die, there's blackness, and then we wake up here. Some of the other summoned species remember their past lives as well, although none of them seem to come from where we do. Of course, we haven't been able to ask all of them. Harry raised an eyebrow in inquiry. Fukasaku replied with food chain, which really did more or less explain the situation. We're here, Shima announced, preempting any more questions. Harry looked around him. And then up. And then higher up. Sitting on a gigantic carved seat at the top of a small flight of stairs was the biggest toad Harry had seen for around 500 years. He was warty and wizened and wearing a beaded necklace with a kanji for oil on it, the same symbol that had been on Jireya's headband. On top of his head was a black hat reminiscent of a graduation cap, and on top of that was a shining crystal ball. All strangeness aside, there was a sort of familiarity about him, as though Harry had met him before. He stared, trying to find clues about the toad's identity. He assumed that this was the other toad that Fukasaku had mentioned, the only other toad on the mountain that Harry had met before. "Great Toad Sage," Shima intoned respectfully. "We have brought you a visitor." "Visitor?" asked the toad, his deep voice making the floor vibrate. "I didn't call on any visitors." He squinted at Harry, leaning closer. "Who is this? If I didn't know any better, I'd think that you brought me Harry Potter." Harry stepped forward. Actually, they did. He switched to English, curious if the toads would follow him. "Harry Potter, traveling wizard. I am Gamamaru," the giant toad introduced himself, sticking, to Harry's disappointment, to the native language of the land. "Keeper of prophecies and first sage of toads. But," he added, switching to English, "you can call me Trevor." "Otter-san said instructions were with a mirror, right?" asked Haruka-san. Naruto nodded, waving a hand in the general direction of the curtain over the mantelpiece. He watched out of the corner of his eye as Haruka-san drew it back and rubbed the back of his head in confusion. "There's nothing here," the teenager told him. Naruto bit his lip to muffle his snicker, waiting for it to happen. "Nothing here?" Haruka-san's reflection cried in indignation. "There's nothing in your brain, mister. Who needs instructions for dumplings, anyways? You boil them for about 12 minutes from frozen, you dumpling face." Haruka-san shrieked like a girl. "Aren't you going to ask how I got here?" It was Harry who asked the question, interrupting the silence that had settled between them. After Trevor had introduced himself, they'd moved to a garden outside the meeting hall, which had a far more casual atmosphere. Fukasaku and Shima had accompanied them, ordering around attendants to make them a cup of tea. Apparently, the toads had a set specially made for the first sage of toads, with teacups as large as grain silos. For the smaller Harry and even smaller Fukasaku and Shima, the garden was equipped with very tall seats and normal-sized tea sets. Apart from a slight interruption from Naruto as the tea was being made, he'd spent the last several minutes watching Trevor watch impatiently. Trevor shook his head, a great ponderous motion of patience and wisdom. "You will speak when you are ready to," he said. "You have the feel of a man who does not have a home." Harry quirked the corner of his mouth in a wry smile. "Yeah, that sounds about right." There was a pause as the toad continued to study him. "It has been a very long time since I was young and at Hogwarts," Trevor mused after a while, "but I suspect that it has been an even longer time for you." Harry sipped at his tea, debating on his answer. "I stopped keeping track centuries ago," he admitted. Fukasaku and Shima looked shocked, but Trevor simply blinked his roomy eyes in acknowledgement. "You feel more like immortal energy than mortal flesh. You have become more than a mere wizard, haven't you?" Harry bobbed his head in acknowledgement. "Correct again. The whole story behind that is complicated, though." Unconsciously, one hand rose up to rub against the Hallows pendant hidden beneath his shirt. It was warm to the touch, like always, with a faint pulse to its surface that Harry knew mimicked his heartbeat exactly. "Does it have something to do with how you disappeared years after the war?" Shima piped up, sounding curious. Trevor's gaze shifted towards her. "Patience, Shima." "May 13, 2011, Harry said quietly, an automatic response to a question that wasn't asked. Then he looked up and waved a hand in the general direction of the toads. "It's fine, I don't mind explaining a bit. My victory in the war came with consequences, whether they were a price or a reward, I suppose, depends on your point of view. Have you ever heard of the Bureau for the Lodging of Extra-Dimensional Ghosts and Humans, and gradients hereof?" His audience blinked at him cluelessly, then glanced at each other. In an almost simultaneous motion, they shook their heads. Harry set down his teacups and folded his hands, staring down at them as he tried to figure out where to begin. Absent-mindedly, he pulled one glove off. At the base of his thumb was a tiny black bucket and the tattooed letters BLEGHA, his symbol of office to those who recognized such things. Below it was a tiny Hallows sign to match the one hanging around his neck, marking the source of his powers and responsibilities. But together, the whole tattoo was smaller than his smallest fingernail. He supposed that that was as good a place to start as any. Back home, the Deathly Hallows were considered a legend. A children's story, one of those things that everyone knows isn't real. In the last year of the war, though, Ron and Hermione and I learned otherwise. He looked up at the toads. "I'm guessing that you know the story of the last battle at Hogwarts." They nodded. "It's almost impossible not to, living when we did," said Fukasaku. "You gave yourself up to die, and your sacrifice made it impossible for you-know-who." "Voldemort," coughed Harry. He wasn't very subtle about it. "Voldemort then," continued Fukasaku, "to harm any of the fighters for the light. But you didn't actually die and you confronted Yo Voldemort and defeated him. Harry gave an approving hum. Pretty accurate considering how much everything is usually embellished. Except for one thing, he said, leaning forward conspiratorially. I really did die. The boy who lived, remarked Shima thoughtfully. Harry wrinkled his nose. I never really liked that title, he admitted. And there was never anything special about me. The first time, I survived because of my mother's sacrifice. The second time, I got offered a job. Unknown location, May 2nd, 1998, First World Time. Said Harry, looking down at himself. They were right. That didn't hurt at all. You. A voice barked. What are you doing here? Harry glanced up, shocked. A woman was striding towards him, looking thunderous. She was short, with curly brown hair twisted into a bun and a well-cut Muggle business dress. She looked beautiful, if stern, with unusual glowing yellow-green eyes glaring at him from behind smart spectacles. Harry said, feeling confused and therefore not very eloquent. I'm dead. The woman crossed her arms. Ha. She laughed derisively. Like I've never heard that one before. Try again, newbie. What are you doing in the extremely dangerous contraband section? She waved an emphatic arm upward. Hanging from the ceiling was a sign that read, extremely dangerous contraband. Harry looked at it in bemusement, then looked around himself. He was standing in a large, high-ceilinged room, filled with unstable-looking stacks of objects. It looked like a cross between a warehouse and the room of hidden things back at Hogwarts. Apart from the sign hanging almost directly above his head, he could see a series of signs trailing off to his left, slowly descending from somewhat dangerous contraband to mildly dangerous contraband to, if he squinted a bit, lost and found to his right, there was only a single sign. It cheerfully bore the description, get the number and percent number dollar away from here. I don't know. He answered, unsure. I got hit by a killing curse and ended up here. The woman rolled her eyes. If you were going to tell a lie, the least you could do is take off your glasses. I suppose that the disguise isn't too bad, she said considering, looking over his battle-torn wizard's robes, and you even have the accent, but everyone knows that newly dead English wizards arrive at Avalon. Hell, I'm pretty sure that even the wizards know that. Muggle raised, said Harry, pointing at himself. I have to say, I was expecting a little bit more of the afterlife. He took off his glasses, just to see how the woman would react. She walked closer, frowning a bit until she was staring at his eyes. Ah, damn, she said. You really are dead, aren't you? I think so, said Harry, getting more confused by the minute. Why do you believe me now, but not before? All the Grim Reapers from these few worlds have chartreuse eyes, she explained, and stuck a hand out to shake. Emily Richardson, she added. Grim Reaper. Harry Potter, he returned, shaking her hand. Wizard. She nodded distractedly and withdrew her hand, her eyes unfocused with thought. There must be something wrong with you. Hey. Said Harry. He might be a bit out of it, but he could still recognize insults when he heard them. She ignored him, instead pulling a strange device out of nowhere. It was a small metal frame, around 2 handspans wide, with a small lens at the very top. She tapped something on the side of it and a holographic screen appeared inside the frame. Humming to herself, she began pushing buttons on it, parts of the screen making cheerful dinging noises as she did so. There and there. She announced triumphantly. The lens glowed red and she pointed it at him, scanning a red line from the top of his head to the tips of his toes. Turn, she commanded imperiously, and Harry did so, craning his head over one shoulder so he could see. She scanned him once more and stared at the screen impatiently. Oh, great, she said sarcastically. What? Asked Harry, turning back around. You, she said, glaring at him with surprising hostility, you went and got your soul fused with extremely dangerous contraband. They're called the Deathly Hallows, apparently, and some idiot left them in your world several centuries ago. We left them alone because they weren't worth the bother of chasing all 3 of them down, and they were harmless unless they were united. Oops? Asked Harry, feeling sheepish. Oops is right, Emily scowled. It says here, she pointed emphatically, not seeming to notice or care that her finger went through the screen, that when united, they freeze the user's time, grant immortality, and make them the master of death. Do you have any idea what that does to a dimension? Harry shook his head mutely. Of course you don't, you're immortal. She sighed, the anger leaving her with a slight whoosh of air. I'm not paid enough for this. But I really shouldn't be taking this out on you. Sorry, she apologized, patting him on the arm. Don't worry about it, he told her. Freezing time, she explained, is what we call it when someone's physical body no longer ages. Immortality generally means that you're unable to die if your physical body dies, it'll either reform or regenerate after a little while. It varies from case to case. Master of Death, well, I suppose you'll have to figure that one out for yourself. It could mean anything. But an activation like this, especially after the Hallows have been in your dimension for so long, tears at reality. She looked at him with pity in her eyes. I'm afraid I can't let you go back there. Harry shook his head. No. No, this can't be happening. They need me, and I'm not even dead, and I have to go back there. You can't, Emily said. Soon you won't be mortal anymore. You can work here instead. She shrugged. It's not so bad. The pay isn't great, but the coffee's to die for. Soon, Harry repeated, seizing on the word. You said soon. I'm still human, for now. She looked at the device in her hands, scrolling down on it. Human, Class W124 Road, she confirmed. Yes, you are. Isn't there any way I can just stay human for a little while longer? He pleaded. Emily tapped her chin thoughtfully. I suppose I could tie your soul in a knot, she said. It's a bit uncomfortable, and you won't be able to feel your elbows for the next century. But it'll let you stay human for 13 years and 13 days. Please, agreed Harry immediately. That sounds perfect. She held up a hand. But. You owe me for this. I want 13 favors from you, over the na. Done, said Harry. Don't interrupt me, she growled, giving him a menacing look from over top her glasses. Favor number 1, you will refer to me as boss. He gulped, wondering what he'd gotten himself into. Yes, boss. She smiled. Excellent. Now, you can only return here on Friday the 13th from either Ritual Stone Circle or Sea Triangle. I believe your world has one of each. Get out of your world before the knot dissolves, or you'll destroy it when you ascend, and when you get back here, you'll ask for me, understand? Her smile turned into a smirk and she patted his cheek condescendingly. I have a girlfriend, Harry blurted out. She laughed loudly, peals echoing off the ceiling above. And I have a husband. I don't have a slave yet though, and I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you in 13 years. With that, everything faded to black. Then white. Then, chartreuse. Finally, Harry managed to crack one eye open. He was lying in the grass, Voldemort laughing triumphantly over his defeat, as if no time had passed at all. And that is what really happened, finished Harry. He waved a hand through the holographic projection that he'd been using to display his memory. I'll live for more or less forever, but I can never go back home. Shima looked indignant. Is that really what the afterlife is like? Harry shrugged. What mortals get depends on what they believe in. Immortals just get bureaucracy. The female toad sighed with relief. Harry turned to the rest of his listeners, trying to gauge their reactions. Fukasaku felt like vague confusion, but Trevor simply radiated acceptance. That makes sense, the enormous toad told him. Does it? Asked Harry. I find these days that the universe makes very little sense at all. I have seen many things, Trevor told him, and encountered deities before. They are closer to the summons than to the humans of this world. He smiled an ironic smile. Occasionally, they even gift us with prophecy. Harry sighed. I hate prophecies. Love them or hate them, you must abide by them, Trevor cautioned. Fate binds your kind as securely as it does anyone else. More, even you must be careful not to interfere too much. The wizard waved a hand. I'm essentially babysitting, I'll be fine. Trevor peered blearily at him. The child you are babysitting, so to speak, is a child of prophecy. Great things await him. Harry stared at him in disbelief. You have got to be kidding me. Iruka stomped satisfyingly into his own apartment and flopped down onto his couch. His nice, normal couch, which did not somehow extend to fit a teenager, a child, and a full open scroll of calligraphy, all lying end to end. Hey Iruka, his roommate yelled a greeting from the kitchen. How was your day? In response, Iruka grabbed a pillow which, with blissful normalcy, did not squeal indignantly and screamed into it. After a few more screams, he looked up. Mizuki, a friend of his since childhood, raised a silver eyebrow. Rough day? He asked. Don't ask, Iruka said, hugging the pillow to him. Just don't ask. What if Harry Potter Master of Death Naruto gets trained end here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.